In a laboratory, a counter ticks over to 1,000. Rust, a young man with light hair, touches the final glowing blue vial, confirming his work is done. He quietly affirms that today's quota is complete. This quota involves creating special distilled water, an indispensable ingredient for potions and transmuting magic creatures. His is of a uniquely high quality because he uniformly mixes his own magic energy into it, allowing him to finish his work much faster than expected. He decides to spend the rest of the afternoon conducting research. As he heads off, he is confronted by the imposing Master Rahalzam of the Arms Alchemy Department, who questions his presence in the storeroom. With a condescending smirk, Rahalzam expresses his disdain for people from the Basic Research Department. Before Rust can properly react, Rahalzam dismisses him, stating that the president is calling for him. Rust internally notes Rahalzam's predictable behavior, always trying to start arguments, boasting about his own well-funded department, and complaining about the Basic Research Department's budget. Meanwhile, Rahalzam casually announces he'll be taking the distilled water, adding that those meant for chores should just do them quietly. The summons leads him to the president's office. The stern woman looks at him and makes a sharp, definitive declaration. The budget for the Basic Research Department is being cut. The declaration is absolute, echoing with the force of a final verdict over the entire institution. The budget is cut to zero. Facing Rust directly, the president elaborates on her reasoning. She claims it is only natural to distribute funds to departments that actually make money, dismissing basic research as a mere support unit that shows no actual results. With that, she delivers the final blow. The Basic Research Department is now disbanded, and Rust will be doing spade work for other departments. She punctuates her decree with a derisive laugh, telling Rust he should be thankful to have a job at all before ordering him back to work. Rust stands in stunned silence, realizing there is no point in arguing. His eyes fall on the president's smoking pipe, and he thinks bitterly that even that magic item would not exist without his now-defunct department. His mind flashes to the specifics of the pipe's creation. The heat conversion circuit, the technique for efficiently absorbing atmospheric magic elements, and the necessary solutions were all provided by Basic Research as part of a joint project. He understands that the perception of his department's uselessness is merely a bias held by disconnected higher-ups. Turning his back, Rust walks away from the office. He reflects that the budget and personnel have been shrinking ever since this president took power, yet he always managed to do his job. He can proudly say that none of the recent successful products would have been developed without the foundational work of the Basic Research Department. He reflects on his now-defunct role. All the projects require the highest quality ingredients, and he was the one who prepared them. But with the Basic Research Department disbanded, he knows there is no point in trying to reason with the current president. As he sits in his empty office, a telecommunications device chimes with an incoming message. He wonders who it could be from, wryly noting that even this marvel of modern alchemy was built with basic materials provided by his own department. The thought brings a flicker of memory, and he realizes who it is. The message is from Kaylin. He hasn't seen her since they graduated from the academy, where they were always up to no good. He recalls how surprisingly well they got along, no different than a male friend, and remembers a time their antics turned a classroom into a jungle. He'd heard she did very well in the last war. He begins to read her message. Kaylin apologizes for the sudden contact, but gets straight to the point. She informs him that she has received a dominion in the borderlands and makes her proposal directly. She wants him to help her develop it. Her offer presents him with a clear choice. He visualizes two paths diverging before him. One path is defined by the meager budget he was assigned, a future of doing nothing but menial chores for the rest of his life. The other is Kaylin's parchment, representing an unwritten future, an opportunity embodied by her smiling face in his memory. Looking out the window of the office that holds so many memories, he makes his decision. On the desk lies Kaylin's letter, signed with the words, "Let's have fun together again." His mind made up, he resolves to quit. Despite his resolve, he feels an emotional attachment to the place. He'd been there since before the current president took the job, developing many products alongside his colleagues. He recalls the previous president, Master Hal Hammer, a self-made man who understood the importance of the Basic Research Department. But Hal Hammer was demoted, and a former government official was put in his place. His thoughts drift to a recent, muffled conversation he overheard. A man from the Arms Association thanked the president, certain she would understand his proposal to absorb the Basic Research Department's budget into their own. The man had called the department dead weight, and praised her wise decision to cut it. Russ scoffs internally at the poorly hidden conspiracy. Suddenly, two sharp knocks echo, but before he can respond, the door bursts open. Master Rahalzam and the associate from the Arms Association stand there. Rahalzam glares, furiously demanding who gave Russ permission to enter. Unfazed by their aggressive entrance, he calmly takes the letter of resignation he had been writing, tears it decisively in two, and looks them straight in the eye. With finality, he announces, "I quit." He stands firm as Master Rahalzam bellows, refusing to accept his resignation. Unfazed, Russ presents his labor contract, stating that he is, in fact, able to quit. He clarifies that while the contract stipulated he must train a replacement for the Basic Research Department, the department's recent dissolution has rendered that clause moot. As he turns to leave, Rahalzam desperately asks who will handle his chores, like making distilled water. Rust coolly replies that he can leave today and, as an alchemist, Rahalsam should find the task easy enough to do himself. The associate from the Arms Association chimes in, pleased to be rid of a nuisance, reminding a flustered Rahalsam that he always claimed they didn't need people like Rust around anyway. The associate continues, his voice dripping with false magnanimity, claiming he was prepared to let Rust stay and do chores out of the association's kindness. With that, he shouts for Rust to get out. Without a backward glance, Rust retorts that he doesn't need their kindness and walks out the door, leaving his former superiors behind. He pauses in the grand, empty hallway, his gaze falling upon a large, magnificent painting depicting a robed figure before a great winged beast. A wave of melancholy washes over him as he realizes he will likely never see this painting again. With a quiet, heartfelt, thank you for everything, he turns his back on his old life, and a heavy door swings shut behind him. Outside, under an open sky, Rust takes a deep breath, contemplating the feeling of freedom. He reflects that with his lease already canceled and all his belongings in his satchel, there is nothing holding him back. A small smile touches his lips. It doesn't feel bad at all. He realizes he can now head directly toward Kalen's dominion. He holds up a small, rectangular object, a summoning card, and channels his energy into it. With the commands activate and manifest, he calls forth his companion, Hippopo. Light erupts from the card, coalescing into the massive form of his riding beast, Hippopo, who appears fully saddled and ready for travel. With a look of renewed purpose, he leaps onto the creature's back, declaring their destination, the borderland. Their journey will take them to the far north of the country, to the developing dominion under Kalen's care. He rode onward, a smile on his face as he recalled Kalen's cheerful declaration that she would gladly take him in. She always made such a big deal out of things, he mused, doubting that a regular alchemist like himself could be that important. With his destination set, he spurred his mount forward. As Hippopo trotted along the familiar stone path, he realized it had been some time since he'd truly been outside. He used to frequent these parts to gather materials, and the wind felt nice, carrying the scent of new flowers sprouting. He let out a breath, feeling the weight of his past stress begin to lift. With plenty of time on his hands now, he decided he would gather some ingredients for the first time in a while, wondering if any were left near the lake. Suddenly, his relaxed journey was cut short. Hippopo's ears twitched, and the beast trembled beneath him, a clear sign that something was amiss. He vaulted from the saddle, ordering Hippopo to stay alert. Ahead, someone was collapsed on the path. While it could be a bandage trap, he reasoned it was unlikely on this deserted road. It must be a genuinely injured person. Upon closer inspection, he recognized the distinctive armor. It was a knight priest, an exceptionally rare sight in these remote parts. He knelt beside the unconscious woman. A quick touch to her forehead confirmed his suspicion. She was burning with a fever. He remembered that medicinal herbs grew nearby that could help. But first, he needed to assess her condition, starting by securing her respiratory tract. Murmuring an apology, he gently began to reposition her as she let out a pained groan. As he moved her, her cloak shifted, revealing a dark, swirling pattern spreading across her skin. His eyes widened in shock as a terrible thought crossed his mind. Could this be a curse? Kneeling over the unconscious knight priest, Rust places his hands above her, activating a magical ability. He initiates a transcription, causing a faint glow to emanate as he begins to analyze her condition. The transcription materializes into a glowing scroll, displaying the results of his analysis. Rust carefully examines the complex diagrams and symbols that have appeared, seeking to understand the source of her ailment. He glances at her pained expression, confirming she is suffering. The scroll reveals that while she is cursed, her immediate problem is different. Her fever is caused by poison. He briefly considers that this is something he should report to a specialist, as it doesn't seem to be a critical emergency. His analysis pinpoints a wound on her flank as the entry point. He deduces it's a special type of poison, likely from a familiar, and realizes he doesn't possess the correct potion to treat it. Looking out at the forest path, he resolves to make a new one. Before leaving, he summons his large, six-legged beast. Hippopo, he commands, please watch over her. The creature lets out a soft rumble of acknowledgement, settling down beside the motionless knight priest. With his companion on guard duty, Rust sprints away, pushing himself hard. He pants heavily from the exertion, his breath catching in his throat. He comes to a stop, wiping sweat from his brow and lamenting how his lack of exercise is showing. Fortunately, he had anticipated this possibility and prepared stamina potions. After drinking one, his fatigue vanishes instantly. He looks out over a clearing and finds what he was looking for, medicinal herbs. He remembers the area where they grew, noting it seems smaller, and wonders if someone has been harvesting them. Deciding to take only what he needs, he identifies herbs that help regenerate wounds, restore stamina, and expel poison. He knows that while the herbs themselves aren't very potent, their effects can be greatly enhanced through transmutation into a potion. His eyes fall upon a nearby stream. This means he realizes that even if the knight priest had reached this spot, her condition would have left her unable to save herself. For him, however, it is a different story. He can gather water here, and a simple transmutation should be enough to prepare it. With all his materials gathered, he prepares for the final step. He declares his intent to use a transmutation that focuses on speed. Holding several alchemical scrolls, he focuses his energy and begins to activate the process. He begins the transmutation, activating his alchemy. His focus narrows as he targets 5 distinct points in the water before him, commanding the release of gravity's constraints upon the liquid. The process of purification begins. He watches with intense focus as the liquid coalesces into a perfect, shimmering sphere, the impurities separating and vanishing. He reflects on his creation. While the method is similar to making distilled water, this is something far beyond it, perfectly pure water. He is actually quite proud of it, considering it one of the best things to come out of his basic research. He even made a dedicated scroll for the process, as creating it manually would be far too much trouble. Though it is, in essence, just water and nothing else, he knows it takes more than simply activating a scroll. He has practiced the technique 1,000 times, enough to do it in his sleep. To bring out this ultimate level of purity, however, requires several fine adjustments during the transmutation. He considers the next step, recalling a fundamental principle. Liquids with a high degree of purity dissolve other substances with ease. He realizes that if he were to add the medicinal herbs directly, the perfectly pure water would destroy and eat them in order to maintain the world's balance and its own pristine state. This destructive purification is the key. By consuming the herbs in this violent, instantaneous manner, the water itself transforms, resulting in a highly concentrated potion. With the transformation complete, the finished golden potion is fixated in this world. He immediately moves to the next step, activating a third scroll to partially release the constraints of gravity once more. And then, the process is finished. He carefully funnels the liquid into a vial, creating a freshly made potion with 0 impurities. Inspecting his work with a nod of satisfaction, he resolves to hurry back. As he prepares to depart, a heavy, rumbling sound echoes through the woods. Startled, he turns to see a hulking, monstrous figure made of rock emerging from the path ahead, wondering what it could be. The creature takes a heavy, earth-shaking step forward. Its massive stone fist is clenched as it lumbers out of the forest and into the clearing, its intentions appearing hostile. The golem's advance is cut short by a thunderous, booming sound that echoes through the forest, startling birds into flight. Rust flinches, recognizing the terrifying noise as his companion, Hippopo, repeatedly trampling something massive. He wonders what could have provoked such a violent response. He turns to see Hippopo standing calmly beside the pulverized remains of the rock creature. Rust asks his companion what it was, his eyes wide with surprise at the sight of the defeated monster. Realizing Hippopo has saved him, he praises his familiar for a job well done, questioning if the golem was some kind of summoned creature. He concludes that the threat is gone for now, but can't be a coincidence. The creature was very likely chasing the unconscious night priest. Setting aside the mystery, he decides he must first treat her external wound. He uncorks a small bottle and carefully applies its contents to her injury. The potion glows with a soft light, and the dark, cursed-looking wound on her chest vanishes completely. As the healing magic works, the night priest stirs with a soft groan, her eyes slowly fluttering open. She sits up, her gaze fixed on Rust, who stands before her. Her first question is about the enemy that was pursuing her. He points toward the forest floor, explaining that if she means the familiar, it's been dealt with. After a brief glance at the remains, her focus returns to him, her expression hardening as she demands to know who he is. He almost identifies himself as a member of the association, but quickly corrects himself, stating he is merely a traveling alchemist. He admits that old habits can be scary, as he only just quit. He explains that while he took the liberty of healing her external wound, the poison remains in her system, and warns her not to overexert herself. She processes his words, realizing he saved her life. She offers a quiet thank you, but her relief is quickly replaced by suspicion. With a weary and guarded expression, she asks how much that potion will cost her. He realizes she misunderstood his intentions, thinking he wants payment before finishing the treatment. He clarifies that he has no ulterior motive, though he acknowledges it would sound suspicious if he said it was free. He explains that he simply thought it would be easier if she were conscious enough to drink the main antidote herself. She closes her eyes, a look of shame on her face as she apologizes for her suspicion. She now understands that he truly acted out of kindness. Russ simply confirms this with a quiet yes. He considered the night priest's hesitation. She felt the potion was too expensive to accept for free. He decided on a different approach, proposing a contract instead. He introduced himself as Rust, a traveling alchemist heading to the northern borderland to serve under someone named Kalen. In exchange for the potion, he asked that if disaster ever befell him, she would lend him the power of her sword. Following his proposal, Rust asked for her name. The night priest looked back at him, her expression unreadable. He clarified that he was merely lending the potion to her, framing the exchange as a temporary loan. She introduced herself with solemn gravity. She is Talia, a knight of Arasla, the goddess of vengeance, and the third of 3 swords. Reaching out to accept the potion, she formally accepted the debt. She swore an oath on her sword, promising that her blade would cut through any disaster that might befall him. As she made her vow, Rust had the distinct feeling that she had taken his casual proposal far more seriously than he ever intended. Without further hesitation, Talia drank the potion. A pleasant warmth immediately began to spread through her body. The sensation intensified. Her eyes widened in shock as she instinctively touched her neck, feeling a profound change occurring where the curse had taken root. The dark, swirling mark on her skin faded and then vanished completely. Talia stared in disbelief, realizing the curse was gone. Watching from a short distance, Rust reflected internally that lifting the curse was merely a side effect. He recalled trying various kinds of holy water on similar afflictions before, but none had ever worked. The secret to the potion's power was its primary ingredient. The water he used was perfectly pure, like the original water created by the gods. It was, in essence, nothing more than water itself in its most primordial form. He knew that this water was imbued with a divine element, granting it an effect far greater than any holy water consecrated by mortals. Realizing Talia would soon have many questions, Rust decided he had to leave immediately to get to Kalen's domain. He announced his departure and summoned his mount. "Full speed ahead, Hipopo," he commanded. As they sped away, Talia called out, asking him to wait, but he was already gone. She was left alone, watching him disappear. Holding the golden vial, she wondered if it was the legendary elixir. A small, intrigued smile touched her lips. She now felt indebted to someone truly incredible. No matter what disasters this person might face, she would be eager to put her skills to use. Her thoughts settled on his parting words. He was going to the borderland in the north. With a determined stride down the forest path, she set her own course. She would finish her quest for vengeance quickly, and then head north as well. This shared direction was underpinned by a simple, powerful philosophy. In every field, the basics are the cornerstone, a critical factor in the pursuit of results in this world. The vial, a testament to this idea, floated in the abstract space of thought. In the end, how many people truly understand such a fundamental truth? While traveling, Rust admonishes his mount, Hipopo, for trying to eat his food. He reflects that they must be near the last village before the northern borderland. He takes a bite of his provisions. A portable ration Kalen used to call a grass brick, an alchemical creation of dried cereals and fruit. Despite its unappetizing name and appearance, he finds it doesn't taste that bad, hoping to reach the village by the next afternoon. The next day, his hopes are realized. As Hipopo slows, Rust consults his map and confirms their arrival at the village of Toma. Looking at the rustic, somewhat run-down buildings, he notes that this must be near where Kalen lives. Having arrived, he decides to explore on his own. He thanks Hipopo for the journey and, with a flash of light, activates a spell to return the summoned beast, bidding him farewell for now. As he turns, a man with long, dark hair suddenly confronts him, demanding to know who he is. Startled, Rust introduces himself as a traveling alchemist. The man, shocked by this revelation, immediately insists that Rust come with him to speak with the village chief. He agrees and follows the man. His guide points out fresh Kajiro branches hanging at the entrance to a house, identifying it as the chief's residence, and calls out that he has brought an alchemist. An elderly man with a long white beard emerges, questioning if it's a real one. The guy confirms that he believes so. To settle the matter, Rust steps forward with a polite greeting and presents his official medallion as proof of his identity. The elderly man introduces himself as the chief of Toma and confirms the medallion's authenticity. The guide, looking on, notes that such a medallion also signifies that Rust is of the highest rank. Hearing this, Rust internally acknowledges the truth. Though he hadn't given it much thought, his medallion does indeed mark him as a master alchemist of the highest rank in the country's leading organization. The chief apologizes if his people caused any offense and invites Rust for tea, explaining that he has something to ask of him. Accepting the invitation, Rust sits down inside as the guide serves them tea. He reflects that after days of eating portable rations, it is nice to have something warm. The conversation, he thinks, should go smoothly. The chief, however, breaks the comfortable silence with a sudden question. Does Rust have any old-style magic crystals? The question hangs in the air. Rust stares into his cup, pondering the query about old-style magic crystals. The chief leans forward, adding that he may be able to help Rust in return. To explain his strange request, the chief brings up the total revamp of magic guns that occurred during the war a year ago, illustrating the technological shift from older models to newer ones. The old chief presented two firearms, laying them on the table. He identified one as an old magic gun and the other as the new model. He explained that for people in remote regions with no military training, these guns were once indispensable for defending against beasts and monsters, but that had changed about a year ago. He elaborated that the old magic guns were wonderful, resilient, and fuel-efficient items, true friends to those in the frontier. They only needed their magic crystals changed once in a while. The H-32 model, he noted, was especially reliable. Rust listened intently, picking up the old weapon to inspect it. As his hands traced the lines of the firearm, the chief recalled its slogan, "Peace of mind for soldiers until the very end." He added that the Alchemist Association began its development around the time a certain master Hellhammer joined, and that Hellhammer himself had spearheaded the project while in the arms transmutation department. Russ considered this information. He mused that while the gun's concept of simple sturdiness and low fuel consumption was seen as plain at the time, the people who actually used it held it in high regard. He concluded that Master Hellhammer had done a great job. Xavier then interjected with disgust, stating that while the new model is called sophisticated, it's worse than excrement. The chief confirmed this, detailing the new gun's terrible fuel efficiency, its tendency to break easily despite increased power, and its proneness to accidental discharges. The biggest problem, he revealed, was that production of old-style magic crystals stopped when the old guns were discontinued. The villagers explained they had no choice but to buy the new R001 model, which they consider a piece of junk, and now they couldn't get crystal for their old H32s. The new guns were too expensive to use, and the old ones lacked sufficient power, leaving them unable to properly defend themselves. Because of this, the chief continued, damage from beasts and monsters had increased, especially in remote villages. They could only fire their weapons when absolutely necessary to conserve the few crystals they had, and even then, there was a high chance the gun would misfire or break completely. Rust listened, understanding the gravity of the situation as the chief lamented that everyone was scared, causing families to move away. The alchemist then asked if they had any of the old crystals left, to which the chief replied they had none. With a slight smile, Rust asked if they would let him have the old guns, startling the two men. His smile widened into one of pure confidence. He paused for a moment before making a simple, yet profound declaration. But I can make them. The villager's shock instantly transformed into elation. Xavier slammed his fist on the table, shouting that it was wonderful and thanking Rust profusely, his voice filled with overwhelming relief. He and the village chief listen as Rust moves on to the topic of his reward. The young alchemist's request for a reasonable amount of Kajiro materials leaves both men momentarily speechless. Xavier explains that while many Kajiro plants grow nearby, they are considered useless. Unfazed, Rust expresses delight at their abundance, stating that old literature claims every village has at least one. He asks to be taken to them, noting their fruit should be ready for picking. The village chief understands and agrees, leading the way. As they walk, Rust notices a crowd of villagers has begun to follow them, and he chuckles to himself, figuring it can't be helped in a small town with little entertainment. He also observes the distinct lack of children. Their path leads them to the Kajiro forest. Rust gazes at the grove, thinking it a wonderful sight. Before the trees, the village chief confirms these are the branches and fruit Rust wanted. Seizing the opportunity, Rust turns to the onlookers and asks them to help gather the Kajiro materials, even just the ones on the ground. As the villagers begin their work, Rust kneels and lays out 3 scrolls, activating them all at once. He internally resolves to make the process flashy and put on a show. The villagers watch in awe, whispering among themselves about alchemy and secret techniques, confused by the scrolls. He slams his hand to the ground, and the scrolls erupt into a swirling vortex of energy. As shimmering particles are drawn into the spell, he issues a single command: purify. The vortex intensifies as Rust reflects on his method. He knows that magic stones for monsters are simply magic elements from the atmosphere, solidified over time. With his proud creation, he can filter these elements directly from the air, making monsters unnecessary for the process. His unique technique makes the magic elements visible, swirling in a highly concentrated stream. The villagers murmur, unable to comprehend what they are seeing. Rust knows this is because the purification scroll is his own creation, used by no one else. This is the crux of his transmutation. He then reveals the final step. Kajiro fruits are used in many transmutations because they are especially good at housing magic elements. With a gesture, he directs the purified energy to polish and infuse the gathered fruits, completing his work. He watches as the villagers marvel at the tiny vortex of wind he has created, which they call a tornado. The spectacle is simple enough for them to understand, and he notes the strong response. He then considers his next step, throwing the Kajiro fruit, already infused with magic elements, into the swirling vortex. The purpose of this vortex is critical, as one of the factors that determines the quality of magic crystals is how they are cut. As he holds his hands over the vortex, he clarifies that his polished scroll does more than just create a tornado. Its true substance is the fine, abrasive particles within it, like diamond dust. He possesses the ability to freely change the density of this dust and the speed of its rotation, allowing for minute, precise adjustments. With his plan set, he decides it is time to increase the density of the diamond dust within a vortex. The tornado brightens, sparkling intensely as the concentration of abrasive particles increases. He smirks at the glittering display, musing that women seem to appreciate shiny things. His focus then returns to the technical requirements. Magic crystals are governed by 3 norms: size, output, and capacity, with the cut determining the output. If the size and output don't match, the crystal is useless. Thankfully, he remembers the norms for old-style magic crystals perfectly and resolves not to make it too small. With a final command to fixate, the process reaches its climax. The The magic elements are completely sealed inside the Kajiro fruit as it is shaped by the vortex. In a flash of light, the transformation is complete. A perfect, faceted magic crystal now exists where the fruit once was. Magic elements from the atmosphere, given form and processed into a solid state. Holding the finished product, he announces to the stunned crowd that it is done and came out quite well. The villagers can only stare in utter amazement. At the village chief's behest, Rust hesitantly agrees to test fire the device designated H-32. As the villagers watch with bated breath, the chief takes aim with his own device, preparing for the demonstration. The resulting blast is immense, a pillar of light that pierces the sky. The villagers erupt in joyous celebration, realizing it is a true magic crystal and that they can now live without fear. Watching their reaction, Rust feels a quiet sense of fulfillment, believing it was all worth it. Resolved, he decides to continue production. With a surge of power, Rust activates his alchemy, simultaneously setting 3 transmutation arrays to work, the magical energy swirling around him as the villagers look on. After an hour of work, he stands before several large baskets overflowing with shimmering crystals. He announces to the stunned villagers that he is finished and that they can take all of them, each one brimming with magical elements. The village chief is utterly flabbergasted. He exclaims that these crystals should last twice as long as those from market. Overwhelmed by the sheer quantity, he mutters that they may not be able to use them all and will need to consult the feudal lord. He then clears his throat, admitting that in all his years, he has never been so surprised as to lose his composure. As the villagers marvel at how smoothly the work was completed, Xavier calls out that everything is ready for transport. Though they offer to help carry his things, Rust politely declines. He thinks to himself that it was a kind gesture, but unnecessary. He then demonstrates why their help isn't needed. Internally, he explains his process. Using an ability called Polish to reduce the density of the diamond dust to 0, he then effortlessly lifts the entire pile of raw materials into the air with a swirling tornado of energy. The onlookers are amazed, watching him store everything in an instant. Rust internally notes that the materials are being drawn into his backpack, while he makes adjustments to a release scroll. His demonstration complete, he turns to the village chief, stating there is something he wishes to discuss. The chief agrees, instructing Xavier to handle the rest as he leads Rust away. Inside the chief's home, Rust sips his tea, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment from seeing the villagers so happy. The chief observes him, and Rust realizes the old man is perceptive enough to have noticed his desire for a private conversation. This insight gives Rust the confidence to speak openly about a certain matter. He notices the chief's silence and worries he might have made him nervous. Rust clarifies he only wants to discuss the village's future. The chief, however, was simply calculating. He asks if the village will be set for a few years, to which Rust replies that, given the quantity and superior quality of the crystals, they will be secure for a few decades. He confirmed to the grateful village chief that this isn't the only village in need of old-style magic crystals. In fact, he explained, everyone in this remote region desperately wants them, and that is precisely what he wishes to discuss. He then formally proposed the idea to discuss the possibility of doing business with a new dominion of the night named Kalen, specifically concerning the trade of old-style magic crystals. The village chief reacted with surprise, recognizing the name. He had heard about Kalen from the region's lord, recalling her reputation as a remarkable warrior in the last war, capable of felling 3 heavily armored men with a single swing of her sword. He continued, explaining that her inhuman strength led to an inelegant nickname. Rust, however, cut him off, stating his discomfort with the name and revealing that Kalen is a friend from his academy days. Declaring his intent to visit her new dominion, Rust requested a secret meeting with the local lord to discuss the matter. He laid out his plan, confident he could arrange a reasonable deal. The village would gain a new source of revenue by supplying Kalen's domain with magic crystals, which would also please the local lord. He assured the chief that the village's own supply was secure for now, and that he needed to begin laying the groundwork for this new enterprise. The village chief considered the proposition for a moment before giving his ready consent, calling it a simple request. With the chief's approval, Rust made another request, pen and paper to send a letter. He explained that he needed to contact another friend from the academy, one who should still be in the country's army, to further prepare for his plan involving the magic crystals. As he prepared to write, he considered the risks. While people like Rahalzam might try to interfere, his greater concern was the army. He reasoned that if a large quantity of old-style magic crystals began leaving the territory, the military would certainly intervene, as they have a vested interest in new magic gun equipment developed during the war. The chief thanked him for his thoughtfulness. Rust, momentarily wondering if the praise was for his alchemical feats, simply activated a pocket watch-like device engraved with a transmutation circle, which began to glow. The chief asked him to at least stay one night so the village could properly thank him, but Rust politely declined. As he prepared to depart for the borderland, several villagers, including Xavier and Sophie, shouted absurd alchemical requests after him. Ignoring their pleas, he set off, leaving the grateful crowd behind. He rode onward, observing the barren wasteland that stretched out before him. The reality of the land was far worse than the stories he had heard. He hadn't thought it would be this desolate. He realized he had never seen most of the living beings in this wasteland, making it difficult to be certain if they were even monsters. As he pondered this, Hipopo let out a sudden, startled cry. The reason for the alarm became clear as unseen assailants swarmed them. Rust clenched his fist in frustration. Every single creature they had encountered had attacked without provocation. After dealing with the attackers, he knelt to examine one of the remains. He was surprised to find what looked like a waterproof bag. Donning a pair of harvesting gloves, he decided to collect it, speculating that the material could be useful. He took a moment to rest and analyze the situation. He recalled that monsters in remote regions often struggled against regular animals, which made this abundance of unique creatures all the more intriguing. Consulting his map, he saw he was approaching a body of water, and from there, it was only a short way to Kalen's domain. The prospect of researching so many unknown monsters was an exciting one. Following the map, he soon arrived at the lake and decided it was a good place for a break. As they approached the shore, however, Hipopo began to act strangely, issuing a low warning. Rust's gaze followed to the water's surface, where he saw magical elements fluttering, and he wondered if different monsters lived here. His mount's warning was directed at a small creature emerging from the shimmering water. To his surprise, it was just a little lizard, its form seemingly harmless and quite unexpected. While traveling, Rust's attention is caught by something in the water, its color striking him as rare. Before he can investigate further, a massive tentacle erupts from the surface, forcing him to drop into a defensive crouch as it lashes out. The tentacle violently flings a small, lizard-like creature through the air. Rust realizes the creature was the target. As it lands hard on the ground, its frightened eyes meet his. He hesitates, acknowledging that even if it looks like a child, it is clearly a monster. He reflects on the law of survival, that an enemy appearing harmless is often the most dangerous. Despite this logic, he feels a pang of sympathy and, giving in to the feeling, shouts for Hipopo. As if its task is complete, the massive tentacle slips back beneath the water surface, leaving the small lizard motionless on shore. With Hipopo now beside him, Rust cautiously approaches the fallen creature. He thanks his mount and gently prods the lizard, confirming that while it doesn't respond, it is not dead. He decides to analyze the situation. After briefly considering taking the tentacle as material, he activates a handheld device to perform a transcription on the lizard. He quickly realizes that since the creature is not human, he cannot get a complete reading. From the limited data, he deduces the lizard is suffering from extreme fatigue, its mitochondria having worked at full capacity before declining. Unable to fully understand its condition, he tells Hipopo to remain alert and decides a simple potion is the best option for now. He asks Hipopo if the monster has returned as he carefully administers a single drop of potion. The device confirms an immediate improvement. The lizard's mitochondrial activity has risen to the level of an average human. Still, the creature does not stir. Rust contemplates the unconscious creature, noting how rare it is for Hipopo, who is sensitive to malice, to be so calm. He wonders if this is no simple monster. He knows that leaving it here would waste his efforts, as it would surely die, especially since a body of water in a wasteland will attract new predators now that the tentacled beast is gone. Hipopo lets out a soft noise, as if suggesting they take the lizard with them. Rust considers this, then unfolds a map. He determines his next course of action is to follow the river connected to the pond, having found his bearings. He sits atop his beast, Hipopo, gazing at a sprawling camp of tents in the distance. He recognizes it as Kalen's camp. As Hipopo lets out a low rumble, Rust gently pats its head. As he approaches, he is met by unseen figures. He introduces himself as Rust, a ranked alchemist from Master Valchum's sect, explaining that he has come to this land at the invitation of Knight Kalen and awaits a reception. In response, two figures materialize before him, landing with practiced silence. They are clad in matching dark uniforms, their faces obscured by masks, each marked with a distinct, stylized eye pattern, one red, one blue. The woman with the red-patterned mask formally welcomes him as Master Rust. She apologizes for their cautious approach, explaining that the area is home to monsters that mimic humans. A realization dawns on Rust. This was the danger Hipopo had sensed. Had they advanced further, they would have been in range of an attack. She continues, impressed, complimenting his superb hiding technique and his ability to notice them regardless. She correctly deduces that his clothes are magic items made via transmutation, adding that she now understands why Lady Kalen holds him in such high regard. Rust examines their garments in turn, recognizing the blue and red eye patterns as powerful magic items and pondering the history behind them. Her companion's attention, however, is drawn elsewhere. The younger sister, Roa, points to the small creature on Hipopo's back, asking if it is a monster. The elder, Ari, immediately silences her, stating firmly that they cannot hope to defeat Master Rust, let alone his beast. Ari then apologizes for her sister's forwardness. Internally, Rust is relieved to have avoided a pointless conflict upon his arrival. To clarify their actions, Ari explains that they possess special vision-related abilities. Her younger sister can see great distances, which is how they detected his approach, while she can perceive an individual's strength. Russ now fully understands their concern, realizing the white lizard must have triggered their alarm. He swears upon his medallion to take full responsibility for the creature. Ari thanks him for his understanding and asks him to accompany them to Lady Kaelin. Accepting the invitation, Russ follows as Ari leads him toward a large tent marked with distinct emblems, indicating that they have arrived. Meanwhile, in a command center within the camp, Sophie issues urgent instructions to an operator. She orders a quick dispatch, reporting a return from point D and a persistent connection failure between points A and G after a fifth attempt. Rust is then shown into a private chamber. A figure steps forward to greet him. It is Kaelin. With a confident smile, she exclaims, "You're here." Rust looks up to meet her gaze. He stands before Kaelin, who suddenly seizes his hand with a firm grip. A faint spark of energy crackles between their palms as she looks at him with a bright, intense smile, declaring that she has been waiting for him. Inside the camp's main tent, their reunion continues. Kaelin cheerfully remarks that it has been a long time and playfully teases him for looking older. Visibly annoyed, he brushes off her comment, curtly stating that it is none of her business as he addresses her simply as Kaelin. Unfazed by his response, Kaelin continues, expressing her confidence that reaching the borderlands was no issue for him. Her tone shifts slightly as she inquires if he had any trouble with the two individuals she sent out to welcome him. The question hangs in the air, and Rust's expression shifts as he processes her words. He suddenly understands her method. He recalls her tendency to purposefully create minor conflicts to gauge a person's character and build relationships from that point. Realizing the tense encounter with the scouts was a deliberate test, he dismisses the incident, assuring Kaelin that there was no problem at all. A gentle, satisfied smile spreads across Kaelin's face. With her eyes closed, she expresses her relief, stating that she is glad to hear it. With the initial pleasantries and tests concluded, Kaelin decides it is time to move. She turns, suggesting they find a more comfortable place to talk and announcing a break for everyone present. Inside a makeshift shelter, Lady Kaelin stands before Rust and her two masked attendants, Ari and Roa. Noting the lack of furniture, she decides to repurpose a large wooden crate, stating she will move it to serve as a table. She effortlessly lifts the heavy crate onto its side. Watching her, Rust remarks with a faint smile that she hasn't changed at all. With the crate now positioned between them, Kaelin takes a seat and cheerfully instructs Ari and Roa to bring them tea, pleased with her impromptu solution. He correctly infers that her request for everyone to leave the area means there is trouble. Kaelin confirms his astuteness, but clarifies her original intention was simply to relax and help develop the land by drawing magic elements from the ground. She adds, however, that this is a vital task, as crops won't grow otherwise, and it isn't the reason she summoned him. Leaning forward with a playful glint in her eye, she points at him, teasingly invoking his old title, Academy's Genius. He closes his eyes in mild embarrassment, asking her to stop. Kaelin leans closer, revealing that she was the one who gave him that nickname in the first place, and asks what task he imagined she needed his help with. Her tone becomes serious as she formally tasks Master Rust with treating a disease spreading through the camp and investigating its origin. She informs him that a tent has been prepared for his use, and he agrees to the mission. Following this, Rust walks with Hippopo toward his assigned tent. He mulls over the problem, noting that if it's an endemic disease, people must be developing symptoms after arriving. He resolves to start by confirming the specific symptoms. As he moves through the camp, his friendly greeting is met with piercing, wary stares from the assembled villagers. He realizes that on top of solving the medical crisis, he must also work to earn the trust of these people. Arriving at his tent, he finds Ari and Roa waiting. Ari declares that she still hasn't accepted him. Rust simply smiles, remarking that he's glad they were the first ones he met. As he speaks, Roa quietly urges her sister to stop, warning her not to embarrass Lady Kaelin. He stood before the large tent provided for him, his mount Hippopo resting nearby. He mused that its generous size was a clear message from Lady Kaelin, demonstrating not only her high expectations for him, but also his importance to her dominion and to everyone else in the camp. Entering the tent, he found it completely bare, without any furniture. He recognized this as a characteristic move by Kaelin, who knew him well enough to provide a blank slate. He understood he needed to prepare everything before Ari and Roa began bringing patients. To furnish the space, he began a familiar process. First, he cast a purifying spell on the ground, creating a carpet protected from water and dirt. He then summoned a small lizard-like creature to stay with him before activating a special ability he hadn't used in a while, manifesting his creation, Rose. In response to his call, a single, dark rose bloomed into existence atop a soft, pillow-like form. This was a transmuted beast known as Rose. He knelt and gave the creature its first command, to make a sturdy bed for the little lizard. He noted internally that Rose, much like Hippopo, was not a plant but a transmuted beast. The beast's thorny vines immediately wove themselves into an intricate, basket-like nest, cradling the lizard. Satisfied with the result, Russ turned his attention to furnishing the rest of the tent. With a gesture, he commanded Rose to continue. The vines extended and reshaped themselves into a bed frame, a desk with a chair, and a table for experiments, improving the tent's insulation and airflow. He recalled that Rose was a transmuted beast he had created during his student days. This sparked a memory of how helpful Rose had been during fieldwork investigations. He remembered other students, starting with Kalen, gathering around due to the convenience it offered. Though it had been somewhat annoying then, he now looked back on it as a nice memory. Returning to the present, seated at his newly created desk, he felt ready to begin his new job. A voice from the entrance announced they had brought a patient, and a silhouetted figure asked for permission to enter. He welcomed them, confident he could complete the diagnosis and treatment in the same day. The patient, a young woman, described her symptoms. Her whole body felt lethargic, her legs were heavy, and she tired easily. Rust listened intently, ready to prepare a suitable potion. He explains his initial approach to the concerned villager, stating that he will first treat people with a provisional countermeasure. While he hopes the symptoms will eventually lead him to the underlying cause, he acknowledges that for now, he can take his time with the investigation. This realization gives him pause. The possibility of numbness suggests the affliction could be more troublesome than he first thought, making speed a critical factor. As dusk settles, his thoughts are interrupted by Roa, who calls out that she is already bringing the next patient. The final patient of the day is brought in, with Ari announcing their arrival from behind her mask. Below, the day's work is shown to be a success, with a now healthy Xavier thanking Russ for the treatment. Roa observes that he examines patients so quickly that they will manage to treat everyone in a single day. His speed is a result of a focused methodology. After a patient describes her symptoms of fatigue and numbness, Rust assures her he will transmute a potion and observe its effects. He reflects on his process, reading their status to prepare semi-custom potions. He understands he is only treating the symptoms and must hurry to find the true cause, as delaying treatment could result in after effects. He hands the woman a bottle, instructing her to drink. The potion's effect is immediate. The woman flexes her fingers in astonishment, exclaiming that she can move her hand again. Overjoyed, she thanks the doctor profusely. Watching her, Russ thinks that it's good to hear, though he reminds himself he is not a doctor. He recalls that during his time with the association, no one ever showed such happiness for his potions. As the day's work concludes, he thanks Roa for her help. She dismisses it as simply her job. She then offers both him and Ari a potion she prepared, explaining that it is to relieve fatigue. He accepts the potion, surprised by her foresight, and asks when she made them. Roa confirms she did it in between patients before thanking him and departing with a swift whoosh. Watching her leave, Russ muses that it won't be easy to break the ice with her, then decides to finish up for the night. Alone in his tent, he begins compiling his findings for an interim report for Kalen. He reviews the notes and transcribed patient stories, planning to summarize his current understanding of the disease's origin and mention the magic crystals. His work is interrupted by two villagers at the entrance, who marvel that it's already dark and thank him for his efforts. The villagers express their gratitude and revised opinion, admitting that while they were sizing him up earlier, they should have expected such skill from an old friend of Lady Kalen's. They praise him for treating everyone in half a day. As he departs, Rust internally reflects that their change of heart is likely due to his contributions, and he wishes them well. He proceeds directly to Kalen's quarters. She greets him at the door, inviting him inside. He formally introduces himself as Rust, an alchemist, here to report on the treatment, and states that there is something he must ask her. He arrived late to find Kalen, who asked what he wanted at such an hour. He presented a simple report, announcing that he had finished treating all the patients in just half a day. Kalen was stunned by his speed, but expressed her concern, telling Rust he was still pushing himself too hard. She acknowledged the possibility of after effects from his treatments, her expression turning serious. A moment later, her demeanor softened completely as she looked at him with profound gratitude, thanking him for saving her people. He felt the sincerity in her short sentence and replied that he was simply glad to fulfill his duties. Just then, his stomach let out a loud growl. Kalen laughed, realizing he hadn't eaten, and introduced the two masked women with her as colleagues. She suggested they all get something to eat, and Rust politely requested 2 light meals. She teased him, guessing he had only eaten portable rations between treating patients. Calling him a master alchemist who was beyond help, she let out a genuine laugh, remarking that she hadn't laughed like that in a while. As they waited for their food, she asked him to tell her more about his work. The next morning, Rust stood outside yawning, noting that the small white lizard was still asleep. He was suddenly startled by the appearance of Ari and Roa, who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. He asked how long they had been standing there. Ari greeted him and thanked him for staying with them late the previous night. Roa then added her thanks for the potion, explaining her sister had given it to her. Rust internally marveled at the potion's incredible effect, as a single mouthful had banished his own fatigue, and he tried to read their expressions behind their masks. Roa explained that Lady Kalen had asked them to stay with him again and offered to show him around. When he asked where they wanted to go, they suggested taking him to where the food is stored. Rust agreed, but paused, declaring that he would first manifest a popo. In response to his call, the large beast materialized with a loud cry, startling both Ari and Roa, who flinched back in surprise. He noticed that the sisters seemed interested in a popo. Soon after, the group arrived at their destination. the food storehouse of Kalen's domain. The structure was a semi-basement built into the landscape. Rust deduced it was likely a former monster's nest, reworked into a storehouse. A logical choice in a place where construction materials are valuable. With his curiosity piqued, he decided he needed to speak with the person responsible for it. He holds up his hand, a small metallic object hovering just above his palm. With a determined expression and a single command, activate, he begins his work. The object reveals itself to be a pendulum, which he now holds outstretched. He announces that he is performing pendulum dowsing, a technique used to measure the density of magic elements in the area. As he concentrates, the crystal tip of the pendulum begins to glow faintly, reacting to the unseen forces around. To begin his investigation into the mysterious illness, Rust employs a dowsing pendulum, a tool designed to measure magic elements. He notes that the wider it swings, the more elements are present, and the information is automatically recorded on a transcribed scroll. He decides to start his search at the village's food storehouse. The pendulum's crystals drop to the ground, confirming his suspicion. The magic elements are so thickly concentrated that they create a sterilizing effect, making it impossible for germs to survive. As he kneels to examine the ground, his beast, Hippopo, sniffs near the young girl, Roa, seemingly assisting in the search. His survey continues, revealing highly concentrated magic everywhere he looks, yet the scroll shows nothing out of the ordinary. He reflects on the standard practice in remote regions of storing food in half-basements, not just for the cool darkness, but because the ambient magic naturally kills germs. This leads him to believe it's unlikely that germs are entering people's bodies through the food. Nearby, a villager asks Roa if the monster's nest they found belonged to a bear. Roa simply replies, "Bear," but her mind flashes to a far more sinister creature, a truth she keeps hidden. Just then, Ari arrives with the man in charge of the village's food supply. The man looks at Rust in surprise, confirming his identity. Ari then asks the man about the bear. The man warmly thanks Rust for helping his younger brother, whose limbs had been afflicted with numbness. Expressing his deep gratitude, he shakes Rust's hand and promises his full cooperation. Rust accepts, assuring him he will do his best to help. He recognizes the man as one of the patients he treated the day before. After thanking him, Rust asks to inspect the food storehouse. The man confirms that the building before them is the correct one, and Rust proceeds inside. Inside the storehouse, Rust finds everything in order. All the provisions, from vegetables and cereals to meat from various monsters, are well processed and preserved. He reports to the man that he found no poison or any residue from the monster that once lived nearby, and gives him permission to close the doors. Rejoining his companions, Rust checks with Hippopo, who shakes its head, having found nothing. Ari suggests that while they can't be certain, it seems the disease didn't start here. Rust agrees they must continue their search and decides on their next destination. He declares that they will investigate the area around the large jug used for purifying the village's drinking water. From a distance, Ari and Roa observe the site as a villager tends to the water. He continues his investigation at the village's water station, where a man explains that the large jug provides drinking and cooking water, which is rationed out. Examining the purification device, Rust observes that while the magic item is old, its function is sound, and he detects no problematic components. Having already checked the food supply, he resigns himself to the fact that the source of the poison will not be an easy discovery. As he stands lost in thought, Ari suddenly appears right in front of his face, startling him by suggesting they take a break for lunch. He recoils slightly from her proximity. Roa comments that he can't argue with the suggestion, and a flustered Rust agrees, admitting that Ari tends to ignore him when he's focused. He finds their insistence on him stopping for lunch unnatural. He recalls that Knight Kalen had also instructed the sisters to ensure he eats. Recomposing himself, Rust pats his own head and assures them he can take care of himself. The situation triggers a memory of Kalen forcefully feeding him at the academy when he was too absorbed in his research. With a sigh of resignation, he agrees to eat. Ari and Roa visibly relax. Rust then points toward a large tent, suggesting they eat at the camp's cafeteria. Inside the bustling cafeteria tent, Rust offers to get their food, but Ari and Roa insist on doing it themselves. While they are gone, Rust prepares a meal for Hippopo, carefully weighing and mixing finely ground magic stones. He knows that transmuted beasts can suffer from elemental imbalances, so he creates special pellets and offers the bowl to his companion. Hippopo eagerly devours the meal, which Rust notes is typical behavior for the beast. Moments later, Ari and Roa return with trays of food. Rust examines the meal, a standard soldier's ration from the Admiral Dominion, consisting of smoked monster meat, dried cereals, and fried monster plants. He observes that despite its simplicity, the cook has clearly tried to enhance its flavor. As they find a place to sit, Rust asks if everyone in the camp eats here. Roa clarifies that mostly single people do, as those with families tend to eat at home. The atmosphere reminds Rust of the cafeteria at the academy. The three of them begin to eat in a shared, focused silence. While they eat, he becomes aware of the sisters staring at him intently, sensing they have something they wish to say. He feels their gazes on him. Breaking the silence, Rust asks them both if they have heard of any new cases of the illness or if they have identified any common factors among the patients. Ari gently chides him, suggesting he should focus on eating instead of his investigation. Roa, however, answers his questions directly. She reports that there have been no new cases, and she has not yet found any common points among the victims. Rust thanks her, but his eyes narrow slightly as he studies Roa's expression, sensing something more. Roa internally notes that a lot of the patients are single. Rust overhears this thought, remarking that while not all of them are, it's a nice catch. A realization then dawns on him. He understands that Roa brought them specifically to the tent for singles. His expression turns serious as he processes this new, unexpected lead. He voices his thoughts to Ari, confirming that a large number of single people eat at this cafeteria. A realization begins to dawn on him. There is definitely a connection to be made here. Acting on this hunch, he initiates a transcription process, his hand glowing with energy as a holographic interface materializes. Beside him, Ari confirms that his observation is correct. The process scans the food on his plate, projecting an analysis that leaves him visibly startled by its contents. The transcription reveals a detailed breakdown on a projected document. He raises a finger to his lips, a look of intense focus on his face as he absorbs the critical information. A confident smile spreads across his face as the final piece of the puzzle clicks into place. He has found it. The data on the document confirms his suspicion without a shadow of a doubt. At the same time, Ari realizes the danger. She urgently shouts for Roa to stop eating, explaining that she's detected a trace amount of monster poison that affects the nervous system, perfectly matching the illness's symptoms. Her warning escalates into a frantic cry for everyone in the cafeteria to stop eating, as the food may be contaminated. While she warns the others, Russ presents a small, glowing crystal. He exclaims that this is the key. He knew he had seen this component somewhere before. His declaration captures the sister's attention. Ari turns to him, asking if he has made a discovery, while he pauses, gathering his thoughts before explaining. He confirms her suspicions, laying out his findings. A large number of the patients were single and frequented this cafeteria. Since there was no issue with the water purification, he has deduced the source of the problem. He confidently states that he has more or less figured out, leaving Ari and Roa speechless. Rust arrives at the camp's kitchen area, where he is met by the woman in charge. He introduces himself as an alchemist investigating the spreading disease under Lady Kalen's orders. Believing his theory is correct, he requests permission to examine the kitchen for evidence, prompting the woman to ask if there is a problem with the food. Inside the kitchen, his alchemical tools give off a reading, confirming his suspicions. With new urgency, he asks the kitchen manager to have Roa deliver a message to Lady Kalen. He instructs Roa to tell Kalen to meet him in her tent in about an hour, where he will explain everything. An hour later, he stands before a gathered group inside a large tent. Present are Lady Kalen, her attendants Ari and Roa, the woman responsible for the kitchen, and a man identified as being in charge of the singles tent. Kalen addresses him directly, her expression hopeful. She states that she has heard he has solved the epidemic. In response, he begins his explanation. The source of the illness, he reveals, is a monster that lives in a lake upstream from the river near the camp. Its poison specifically affects the nervous system. She questions this, pointing out that the water from the jug they use for storage is purified. Though the jug is old, it should still purge any poison. She asks why, if that is the case, people are still falling ill. He clarifies that the problem isn't the purified drinking water. The true issue, he explains, is the water being used for other domestic purposes, such as washing clothes and tableware. He continues, detailing that his investigation of the singles tent revealed trace amounts of the monster's poison on washed tableware and clothing. This is because water taken directly from the river is being used for these tasks, completely bypassing the purification process. The group understands. This explains why so many patients came from the singles tent. Rust elaborates that small amounts of poison enter the body through the skin and mouth, accumulating over time to cause the disease. The man from the singles tent and the kitchen manager are deeply ashamed, with the man attempting to take full responsibility, but Kalen raises a hand to stop him. She tells them it is not their fault. She reveals that she was the one who decided to ration the limited supply of purified water. Now that they know the cause, she declares they must reevaluate its distribution. More importantly, their new objective is clear. They must defeat the monster upstream that is the source of the poison. Kalen and her masked companions, Ari and Roa, stare in stunned silence. Before them, Russ smiles brightly, holding up the carcass of a grotesque, fanged fish-like monster. He cheerfully announces that he has already taken care of it, adding that he also saved the small white lizard in the process. She is utterly stunned by his report, struggling to comprehend that he treated the patients, found the disease's origin, and defeated the monster all within a day. Rust, meanwhile, calmly confirms her summary is basically correct, noting that his analysis of the situation revealed no contradictions. His efficiency is so profound it seems almost offensive. He then turns his attention to the camp's kitchen staff, advising them to dispose of the water they have been using for cleaning. He warns that since the monster was only eliminated yesterday, they must not use any water from the river without purification for a while. His gaze shifts to his large companion, Hippopo, asking for confirmation that the creature was the only monster in the pond, which Hippopo affirms with a grunt. Russ then reassures the others that with the source of the poison gone, The water should be safe again in a few days. When Ari asks if he can see the future, he dismisses the notion, explaining that he and Hippopo simply did what was necessary. He then formally addresses Lady Kaelin, bowing his head slightly. He reports that he has successfully completed his assigned task of treating the patients and removing the source of the disease. Kaelin's hand trembles as she processes the news. A cascade of her hair frames her face, her mind reeling from the magnitude of his achievement. Before her, Russ stands with quiet confidence, his mission complete. Her composure returns, replaced by profound admiration. She tells Master Rust that his work was remarkable, far exceeding her expectations, and offers him her deepest gratitude. Rust explains that since the disease was caused by a slow accumulation of poison, more people might still get sick. He agrees to continue treating anyone who feels unwell. Kaelin then asks if he plans to expand the capabilities of his purification jug. Rust affirms that he can, but he will need a budget to do so. Kaelin readily agrees, authorizing the budget. With that, Rust considers his first mission here concluded. He feels it is time to fully enjoy his new life in the borderland, but a sense of unease lingers. He is still cut off from the Alchemist Association and has no way of knowing what might be happening there. The focus shifts to Ari, who introduces herself once more. She is Ari Sard, and she serves Lady Kaelin of the Admiral Dominion. A close view reveals the intricate eye-like symbol on the armor over her midsection. As she and her sister walk through an alley in the capital known as Porcelain Street, Roa asks for Ari's thoughts. Ari correctly deduces she is asking about Master Rust. She then states their current objective, to procure a large water jug that he designated. Her thoughts drift back to their first encounter with him. Ari reflects that Rust is unlike anyone else. She felt his immeasurable fighting power and realized with shock that even if she and Roa had attacked together, they would not have made a dent. The power of his transmuted beast alone was overwhelming. She continues to analyze the situation, certain that she and Roa are the two strongest warriors under Lady Kaelin. She assumes Roa's complicated feelings towards Master Rust are a mixture of admiration for his power, jealousy, and a deep interest in his alchemical abilities, which are so different from their own martial training. Her focus then turns inward. Ari considers scolding Roa for her attitude, but stops, realizing that deep down, she feels the exact same way. She admits to herself that she is simply bottling up these complex emotions, wondering if it is a sign of her own inability. Putting her thoughts aside, she refocuses on their mission. Ari points to a storefront, suggesting it's the magic item shop Russ told him about. As they walk, she notes the tense atmosphere and the heavy expressions on the faces of passersby, a stark contrast to Porcelain Street. She senses it is not malice, but something else entirely. Despite the tense air, which she speculates might be due to the many magic item shops nearby, they proceed. Ari pushes open the door to the store. A woman with long dark hair and glasses greets them from behind a counter, asking what they need. Ari internally notes that the shopkeeper's youthful appearance matches Master Rust's description. The shopkeeper's welcome is followed by a moment of quiet assessment as she observes the empty shelves. She asks who sent them. Ari whispers to Roa that the woman is sizing them up, likely because their warrior attire is unusual for alchemists. Addressing the shopkeeper, Ari states that they have something to sell. In response, Ari presents a small, corked bottle containing a shimmering red liquid. The shopkeeper takes the potion and a sealed document, her gaze sharp and analytical as she inspects the contents and the intricate seal on the paper. Her inspection yields immediate recognition. The shopkeeper identifies the mark as Master Rust's seal. Ari confirms they are on an errand for him and asks if she will buy the high-quality magic potion. The shopkeeper readily agrees, remarking that Master Rust potions are always particularly good and that she will gladly purchase it. The shopkeeper reviewed the terms, her expression shifting to one of confusion. Ari presented a parchment from Master Rust with the explicit instruction to sell the potion at the regular price. The shopkeeper questioned this, explaining that the supply of product from the association had fallen, causing all alchemy-related items to skyrocket in price. Ari simply confirmed that these were her master's orders. Her honesty was a rare thing for a merchant. She admitted that the potion could be sold for many times its regular price. Hearing this, Ari understood why Master Rust had trusted this place and agreed that the regular price would suffice. With the deal settled, the shopkeeper retrieved the payment, a surprisingly heavy sack of coins. After the exchange, the two sisters departed from the shop. As they walked, Ari turned to her younger sister. She asked Roa if she wanted to get something nice to eat, reminding her that Master Rust said they should use the money for their travel expenses. Roa eagerly agreed. Her sister's face lit up with a blush of excitement. The sight prompted a memory in Ari, recalling the events of the day that set this entire errand into motion. The memory began with a villager's account. Just a day before Master Rust arrived, Lady Kaelin had summoned healers, but they all gave up. Rumors, likely started by those same healers, spread like wildfire, causing everyone to flee in fear of the disease. Then, as if by providence, Master Rust appeared in their camp. He continued his story, recounting how Ari and Roa, on Lady Kaelin's orders, had brought the sick to Master Rust. Some patients suffered from numb limbs, others from fever. One by one, they were taken into Rust's tent, and each emerged completely healed. Ari recalled the sheer scale of his ability. He had not only treated the patients with astonishing speed, but had also identified the disease's source and slain the responsible monster beforehand. A realization struck her. He was an extraordinary alchemist. A new hope began to form. Perhaps he could even do something about their eyes. Her thoughts returned to the present. She noticed Roa had stopped eating. Their gazes met through the fabric of their masks, and without a word, they shared a quiet, determined nod. Master Rahalzam's face contorts with frustration, a low growl rumbling in his throat. His anger is directed at the scene before him. The Alchemist Association's special equipment vault, left in a state of complete chaos. "What is this?" he bellows. He stomps into the vault, grumbling about why he is the one forced to deal with the mess. He blames the situation on Rust's sudden departure, which caused a cascade of trouble that forced all Master Alchemists to abandon their regular duties. This neglect, he fumes, is dangerous. Many items in the vault, like certain monster materials, could explode without proper maintenance. Kalen, who has followed him in, asks who took over after the previous administrator was fired due to budget cuts. Rahalzam explains that the basic research department was supposed to, but it was disbanded. As a result, problems began to fester, culminating in an explosion of thick scavenger slime. He angrily adds that entry is restricted to master ranks because of the Class 1 hazardous materials, otherwise he would have sent his underlings. As he finishes, Kalen urgently calls his name, reporting that they have trouble. He snaps at her, asking what she wants while he's busy. Kalen insists it's urgent, revealing that the vice president of the Arms Association is screaming outside. The news startles Rahalzam, who demands to know why she didn't say so sooner. He tells her to find another master rank to finish the cleanup, but the young knight is flustered by the order, wondering how a newbie like her could command a master, especially while dealing with the lingering stink. As Rahalzam departs, Kalen turns to the vault door, intending to seal it before outside magical elements can contaminate the area further. However, she realizes with a sigh that she cannot close it without a master rank medallion. Defeated, she decides to wait at the main entrance for someone with authority to return. Inside the vault, the jar of scavenger slime continues to bubble. Meanwhile, in a reception area, an imposing man named Gan, the vice president of the Arms Association, roars with impatience. He demands to know how long he must wait, reminding an unseen party that they are past the delivery date. He states that the supply of basic materials for transmutation has fallen behind, and he dismisses any excuses as their problem, not his. His fury intensifies as he warns them not to think they can get away with a breach of contract without penalty. The delivery date, he shouts, is clearly stipulated. This equipment is critical, as it is to be delivered to the army for use in the next war. Just as an associate nervously calls out for Rahalzam, the Master Alchemist himself arrives, offering a deep apology to Master Gan for the delay. However, as Rahalzam approaches, Gan's face twists from anger into pure, unadulterated disgust. Gan explodes, ordering Rahalzam to stop and not come any closer. He furiously questions if it's normal for a prestigious master alchemist to attend an important business meeting while emitting such a foul odor, accusing him of mockery. Sniffing his own uniform, Rahalzam realizes with dawning horror that he reeks of scavenger slime. He stammers an explanation, admitting he was in a hurry and only used a deodorant spray, now numb to the smell himself. He stammers an apology to the furious Vice President Gan, who unleashes a stream of insults. Rahalzam promises to change his clothes immediately, but Gan cuts him off, demanding to know when he will deliver on his promise. An alchemist, named Sabesa, watches with concern as his superior is berated. In response to the demand, Rahalzam rashly declares that they will have everything ready by tomorrow. Gan points a threatening finger, warning him not to forget his words. As the vice president departs, the weight of the impossible promise crashes down on Rahalzam, who realizes they are finished. Meanwhile, inside the Arms Alchemy Department laboratory, a group of young, anxious alchemists waits. They are mostly apprentices, and some murmur amongst themselves, questioning Master Rahalzam's judgment for calling in even those who had the day off for this urgent task. He appears before them, his expression grim, and addresses Sabesa. An apprentice quickly explains the order. They must deliver magic circuits that change attributes to the element of fire for the Arms Association. The problem, another clarifies, is that they lack sufficient high-quality distilled water, a key ingredient for inscribing the circuits. He is incredulous, questioning how they could be short on distilled water, which he calls one of the most basic things an alchemist learns to make. He holds up a testing device and a sample magic circuit, explaining that the board is made with transmuted distilled water. Impatiently, Rahalzam snatches the testing device from Sabesa. He examines the crystal, confirms it has enough magic elements, and activates it to convert them into flames. The device merely sputters, emitting a few weak, pathetic sparks before dying out. The apprentices watch the failed test. One observes that there isn't enough power and that the emission of magic elements is unstable. Rahalzam's eyes widen in disbelief at the undeniable failure. His face contorts in utter despair. Behind him, the alchemists lament that they could create the necessary solutions if they had proper distilled water. One wistfully remarks that it would be great if they could use Master Rust's, at the very least for cleaning. The mention of that name makes Rahalzam snap. Don't say that detestable name, he roars. The apprentices realize his jealousy towards Master Rust is completely out of control. Fueled by spite, Rahalzam vows to make distilled water far better than his rivals and orders them to finish the circuits quickly. A few hours later, Rahalzam examines the results of his own attempt. He notes that the values are above the norm, but Sabesa hesitantly clarifies the truth. The results only barely clear the safety margin. This leaves no room for error, increases the risk of lower quality products, and damages the association's reputation for reliability. He held the report, confirming the magic circuit's values were technically up to standard. Yet, he couldn't bring himself to say it was a success. The thought lingered that Master Rahalzam had taken far longer to transmute this single piece, and the result was still a pale imitation of Master Rust's work. He didn't even know what the consequences would be for using such a product. His unspoken concerns hung in the air, but Master Rahalzam, with a dismissive smirk, simply ordered them to continue production. He urged them to hurry, ignoring the worried glances exchanged between the younger alchemists. Elsewhere, as midnight approached, a young female alchemist stood exhausted before a large vault. A nagging feeling that she had forgotten something was abruptly interrupted as the vault door began to warp and melt. She watched in horror as a foul-smelling slime materialized, realizing it must have absorbed ambient magic from the vault she'd left open, triggering some kind of explosive reaction. As the creature grew, Sabesa rushed to the scene, identifying it as a scavenger slime that gets bigger the more it consumes. With no time to spare, he ordered an attack. Grabbing a magic circuit checker, he declared it would have to do and unleashed a powerful torrent of fire directly at the monster. The fiery blast erupted towards the slime, but from across the workshop, Rahalzam cried out for them to stop. He had spotted the wooden box containing all their finished magic circuits, sitting directly in the path of the attack. Without a moment's hesitation, he dove forward, throwing his body in front of the crate to shield it from the blast and the encroaching slime. The attack subsided, leaving Rahalzam collapsed on the floor, covered in the bubbling remains of the creature. The other alchemists stared in shock as Sabesa grimly ordered them to move. He stepped cautiously toward his master, counting softly to himself before reaching out and touching the strange substance covering Rahalzam's body. Rahalzam sat up, physically unharmed but encased in a puffy, inert coating of slime. A dark aura of pure humiliation radiated from him. Seeing this, Sabesa instructed the others to leave their master be and to quickly assess what was left of the circuits. Following his order, an alchemist lifted the lid of the wooden crate. A soft gasp escaped their lips as they saw that every single magic circuit inside was now covered in the same useless, slimy residue. He and his fellow alchemists survey the workshop. They have somehow managed to contain the immediate aftermath of the slime incident, but the room is still in disarray. A foul smell lingers in the air, and one of the alchemists complains that he can barely move, while another notes the cracks that now mar the walls. His thoughts are interrupted by a sudden realization. He exclaims in alarm, remembering the ruined goods, and asks where Master Rahalzam has gone. From off-panel, another alchemist replies that he simply left, covered in slime. Before he can fully process the situation, Kaelin arrives with an urgent directive. She declares the matter important, ordering them to deliver the magic circuits to the Arms Association first thing in the morning. The female alchemist is taken aback. Kaelin, noticing their hesitation, impatiently tells them to just take the crate, suggesting they use a transmute beast for transport and muttering for them to finish it already. Kaelin's morning begins early. As she gets ready, she notices her bed hair, but decides against fixing it, figuring it will settle on its own eventually. After waking, she eats well. Though food supplies are limited, she insists on eating the same rations as her subordinates. She has a particular fondness for a good, meaty steak. Her daily routine is rigorous. She washes off her sweat, then trains hard with her subordinates. However, she's not suited for desk work. When problems arise, she handles them not with paperwork, but with a great, reassuring smile. That smile is a constant, even in the face of disaster. Her face, smudged with dirt and grime from a battle, remains resolute as she tells her people not to worry, that everything is all right. The memory is of a battlefield, now silent save for her voice echoing over the wreckage. She had annihilated the enemy, declaring that her comrades could now rest easy. But the peace is fleeting as Kaelin sits up in bed, the memory revealed to be a recurring dream. For her, the nights are long. Her troubled sleep stems from a time she later recounts to Rust. She speaks of the disease that threatened her subordinates, a foe she couldn't fight, and the powerlessness she felt as their lives were about to slip through her fingers. It was then, she says, that he came and saved them. She continues, her tone shifting to one of pointed observation. She muses that a kind man like him, so obsessed with research, must have had a truly useless boss, noting that he left the association as soon as she contacted him. Later, outdoors near the water, Kaelin spots Rust and calls out to him. She tells him that since he now works for her, she intends to grant him as much freedom and reward as she can. Rust, carrying his satchel, seems surprised to see her and asks if she is going somewhere. She remarks that it's rare for him to be up so early. Rust explains that he has nothing to do for a few days, so he is going out to gather materials. As he tells her to be careful, Kaylin expresses her deep gratitude for his help with the disease. Identifying herself as Kaylin of the Admiral Dominion, she asks if there is anything he wants. Her expression turns serious as she looks at Rust. She insists that he must learn to rely on the people around him. He pauses, touching his chin thoughtfully. He has always figured that doing everything himself is the fastest way to get things done. Kaylin's voice continues, acknowledging that this tendency is both a quality and a fault. The faces of two of her older subordinates appear, their expressions filled with concern. One worries that the strain will eventually harm Rust's body, while the other laments that some people don't notice his overwork is just proof of their own incompetence. Kaylin's voice cuts through, urging him to rely on his comrades. Looking at her, Rust agrees, realizing with admiration that Kaylin has become a great leader. Her serious demeanor breaks into a laugh. She gives Rust a hearty slap on the back that sends him stumbling forward. She declares that she's counting on it and is going to let him spoil her. Thus begins another of Kaylin's long, early days. With a bright, determined smile, Kaylin faces the day ahead, declaring that it's time for them to work hard once again. Riding atop his faithful beast, Hippopo, Rust travels through a sparse, sunlit landscape. He smiles, content to be on the move again after being out for a few days. He reflects on his recent success. Kaylin had provided the budget to solve the water storage problem, and he now possessed the necessary monster materials. He had even managed to hunt additional monsters beyond the initial target, correctly anticipating the need for different alchemical scrolls to avoid damaging the materials. As he approaches the refugee camp, the large tents come into view. Upon his arrival, the villagers greet him with enthusiasm. They welcome him back, asking about his hunt and if he was injured. Rust can feel their excitement, sensing their hope that the water rations might finally increase. He spots the man responsible for food supply management and approaches him. Rust explains that he hunted some extra monsters on his way back and brought some edible parts that might boost their food supply. He admits he only removed the alchemical materials he needed and did no other preparation. The manager is overjoyed and readily agrees to buy them, directing Rust to the butchering station. Following the manager's direction, Rust kneels at the designated monster butchering station. A crowd of curious villagers gathers as a butcher with a clipboard prepares to assess the haul. He unrolls a large alchemical scroll. With a focused expression, he begins the transmutation, pulling the stored contents from the parchment. From the scroll emerges the massive carcass of a bull-like creature with 4 horns. The ground trembles slightly as it materializes. With a confident look, Rust turns to the butcher and asks if he will buy it. The crowd erupts in disbelief. The butcher identifies the creature as 4 male twin linehorns, exclaiming that Rust hunted it alone, despite them being dangerous pack hunters. Another villager marvels that the carcass is in pristine condition. The butcher, impressed, calls for help to handle the massive beast. He simply smiles at their astonishment, holding up a finger as if to pause their excitement. He informs them that there is still more to come and that he will continue taking them out. With another wave of alchemy, he materializes a veritable mountain of monster carcasses. A 3-star thousand rat, noted for its poisonous but tasty meat. A 4-star, 3-headed hell horse, whose skin can be used for clothing. And a rare 6-star mole bear, whose innards are valuable for medicine and its fur for ornamentation. The butcher stares, completely overwhelmed, muttering that this is far too much. While the villagers process the monster carcasses, Rahalzam inspects the haul. He recognizes the thousand rat, hell horse, and mole bear, but points to a smaller creature he's never seen. His expression hardens with respect. Noting that Rust defeated several mole bears and hell horses, which are known to be especially dangerous, he declares that he definitely wants to fight him someday. Rust simply agrees to leave the rest of the assessment to him. Rust then returns to a tent to check on his transmuted beast, Rose. He confirms its condition hasn't changed, which means it is not getting worse. He thanks an unseen caretaker, noticing that they have been administering the potions he provided. He explains that the treatment must be administered over a long period. He cannot use the same magic element-filled potions that are safe for people, as an excess could either kill a monster or make it violent. Peeking out of the tent, he asks the caretaker to please keep doing it, trusting Rose's meticulous nature to help in this situation. Leaving the tent, Rust tells Rahalzam to inform him when the assessments are complete. With that task delegated, he stretches and turns his attention to his next project at a central pavilion in the camp. As he approaches, he sees Ari thanking her sister, Roa, for bringing several large, empty jugs. Ari notes it must have been difficult, but Roa assures her it was no problem and that the jugs are undamaged. Ari muses that with the power in their eyes, they can probably sidestep most trouble. Ari's thoughts drift to the capital, recalling the tense atmosphere and wondering if something has happened, as certain commodities are becoming expensive. Her train of thought is broken when Rust reacts to a loud sneeze from Rahalzam in the distance. Rust remarks that if Lady Kaylin is aware of the situation, then things should be fine. With his mind made up, he announces that everything is ready for him to install a purification feature. He asks the gathered onlookers to step back a little. He declares it will be a simple transmutation as he begins to activate multiple glowing alchemical arrays around him. He begins the process, explaining that he will first grind a magic stone to dust with the density of diamond dust set to maximum for speed. He then releases magical energy into a container of water, carefully maintaining its purity. Finally, he adds the perfectly pure water to the magic stone powder. With a satisfied smile, he holds up the vial, announcing that the solution for writing the magic circuit is complete. Nearby, Ari watches the display, once again finding his abilities to be incredible. As Ari watches with keen interest, Rust holds his grimoire open, preparing his next alchemical process. He targets a magic circuit solution within the book, readying the command to implement it. He then gestures, causing magical energy to flow from the grimoire. In the air before him, he transcribes the complex formula for a water purification circuit. The glowing transcription is then projected onto a large water jug, where the magical circuit begins to permanently affix itself to the container surface. With the circuit in place, Rust explains that all that remains is to fixate the magic crystal that will power it. He calmly states his intention to repeat the process for the other jug. As he works, Ari watches in silent fascination. Soon, both jugs stand complete, each glowing with a newly embedded, eye-like sigil of the purification circuit. Seeing the finished items, Ari assumes they can now use all the water they want, but Rust clarifies that he is only just beginning. He explains that in their current state, the jugs only hold water. He intends to make another magic item, so they won't have to transport water at all, a statement that leaves Ari speechless. She stammers, amazed that he can perform such feats. Finding her reaction amusing, Rust invites her to come along to see his next step, assuring her there is no danger. Ari agrees, and they head toward a nearby pond. At the water's edge, Rust has a popo enter the pond to check for threats. While the bee scouts, Rust prepares a special device to draw water, constructed from scrap material and coated with a compound made from the previous catfish monster's poison to repel other creatures. The popo emerges, confirming the pond is now safe from large threats. Rust thanks his companion and holds up the water-drawing device. Ari inspects it, asking if it uses the magic stone of a specific monster. He confirms that it does, which is why he had to travel to the volcano. He was searching for a specific creature, one called a paralyzing cloud. Rust explains that it is a special grade monster, and crucially, physical attacks are completely ineffective against it. He finalizes the device's settings, programming it to provide feedback and switch targets, and to send a notification if the pond it draws from runs dry. With a confident smile, he announces its completion and prepares to turn it on. The device hums to life, its tall, dark pillars shimmering with magical energy. As Ari asks for the name of this strange magical item, he explains that since he just created it, it doesn't have an official name, but he supposes it could be called a cloud-style water distribution device. At the edge of a nearby pond, the device's purpose becomes clear. It begins to draw water from the surface, transforming it into thick, vaporous clouds. Ari watches in astonishment, wondering if the machine is consuming the water. He clarifies that it isn't, as that method would be too inefficient for large quantities. The secret, he reveals, is the paralyzing cloud's magic stone at its core. He continues his explanation as the magically generated clouds gather and begin to drift away from the pond. The paralyzing cloud, he details, is a monster that appears as a cloud, but its actual body is the magic stone. This stone converts water into a cloud form and uses magic to rewrite physical laws, controlling the vapor and preventing it from dissipating as it moves towards the camp's water jugs. The sheer ingenuity of transporting water as a controlled cloud leaves Ari momentarily speechless. Her sister, Roa, appears beside her, remarking that a demonstration is worth 1,000 words. She then prompts Ari to try interacting with the cloud. Accepting the challenge, she thrusts her spear into the floating mass. The weapon passes through harmlessly, having no effect on the cloud's form. He points out that this resistance to physical disturbance is a key advantage. In such a remote region, physical pipes will be vulnerable to monster attacks, and they lack the resources to apply monster repellent along an entire pipeline. He then reveals the final piece of the puzzle, explaining that he inscribed a corresponding magic circle inside the water jugs. This circle acts as a destination beacon. Upon arrival, the magic that rewrites physics is nullified, and the cloud reverts back to pure water. Seeing Ari's captivated expression, he smiles, finding her interest amusing. With the demonstration complete, he declares it's time to return to camp, where Hippopo waits. In the arid landscape outside the encampment, Rust shields his eyes from the sun, satisfied with his work. He observes that the water system he installed is now reaching the water jugs, declaring the task done for the time being. Nearby, Ari watches him. Ari approaches, informing him that Lady Kaelin is calling for him. Rust agrees to go, asking if something has happened. Apologizing for the summons, Ari urges him to look at a document she is holding, just as Kaelin calls out his name. Inside a tent, Kaelin presents 2 communication parchments. She explains that one is open, while the other is still sealed. She then compliments Rust on his speed, remarking that it would have taken a regular alchemist days to install the water jug and purification system he just finished. Rust replies that writing magic circuits by hand is indeed a time-consuming process. He then notes that the open parchment is addressed to Kaelin and suggests she can check it later. As she reads the document, Kaylin recognizes it is from Toma's village chief. She expresses surprise, noting the proposed conditions are good, and wonders if the chief has already discussed a business deal over magic crystals with his feudal lord. Rust observes her, deducing that by handing it to him directly, she is implicitly giving him permission to read it. Suddenly, Kaylin grabs Rust by the collar, demanding to know what kind of trickery he has employed. Startled, Rust points out that she is ripping his clothes and cautions that with her superhuman strength, she could easily injure him. She immediately apologizes and releases her grip. Her eyes fixed on the parchment, Kaylin declares the terms are not merely good, but extraordinary. She asks if it refers to components for the H-32. Rust calmly confirms this, stunning Kaylin, who asks in disbelief if he can truly manufacture them. He affirms that he can, leaving her momentarily speechless. He then asks if they also possess H-32 magic guns at the camp. Kaylin clarifies that they do not, as the weapons are no longer available anywhere. Rust is unsurprised, explaining that most of the combat personnel at the camp are his former subordinates and are thus experts in military arts. A serious expression crosses Kaylin's face as she points out that he must realize he is directly challenging the interests of powerful figures in the capital, essentially picking a fight. Bruce casually agrees. As she voices her concern, he leans back in his chair with a smirk, asking if she's suggesting it's his job to deal with the fallout. Kaylin presents a document to Rust, explaining that she has been looking into a man named Harold, who is a mutual friend from their academy days. Rust reacts with surprise, recalling that Harold worked in accounting. He then grows serious, mentioning that he had heard from Ari and Roa about trouble in the capital, but hadn't realized the situation was so dire. Seeing his concern, Kaylin shifts their focus, declaring it a good opportunity and suggesting they finalize their own business deal in one go. Rust agrees, confirming he is ready. With a confident smile, Kaylin tells him to look forward to it, promising they'll give him more than he can handle. With a determined expression, Rust formally accepts the terms. Kaylin smiles, remarking that their back and forth reminds her of their school days. Later, on the day their magic crystal business with the neighboring dominion is to begin, Rust relaxes atop Hipopo, enjoying the pleasant wind. He, Ari, and Roa are waiting at the camp entrance. Ari remarks that the gentle sunlight makes the wait rather pleasant. His calm demeanor vanishes as he sits up abruptly on Hipopo's back, announcing that their counterparts have arrived. He squints into the distance, but sees nothing. Roa, however, confirms she can see them using her long-distance sight. Rust realizes this means they will arrive soon. Ari, her masked face turned toward the horizon, adds her own observation. One of the approaching figures looks strong. The memory of Kaylin's words surfaces. She had found the negotiations boringly easy due to her many trump cards. Back in the present, Rust, who had left the details entirely to her, raises a hand to his brow and confirms that he can now see them too. He reflects on the contract Kaylin secured. He is impressed that all the tedious aspects, supply of materials, transportation, and distribution, are being outsourced. His only responsibility is to transmute Kajiro fruits into magic crystals and collect a large sum of money. Standing proudly beside Hipopo, Rust celebrates his newfound freedom. The terms are incredibly convenient. No minimum or maximum production quotas, allowing him to work as he pleases. He only needs to inform Kaylin of major changes in output. He is thoroughly impressed that she managed to negotiate such a deal. He watches the approaching caravan, noting that in this remote region without proper roads, travel by mule is the only viable option. He understands that for the future development of this land, prioritizing the construction of roads will be a critical decision, both politically and economically. As the group draws closer, he notices that some of the travelers are injured. Xavier, leading the caravan, confirms this, speculating that they were attacked. He remarks that they don't seem to have suffered much damage, wondering what kind of foe they faced. The man, Xavier, spots Rust and calls out his name with relief and excitement. Despite visible scrapes and a bandaged arm, he declares he is very happy to be part of this transaction. Rust advises him not to stress himself, reassuring him that they can speak freely as they have in the past, while noting that some of the people are wounded. He then tells Kaylin that the difficult decisions are hers to make. Offering a small vial, Rust explains that the all-purpose potions he made beforehand should be sufficient, as no one appears seriously injured. His gaze drifts back to the caravan, and he observes that while some people are hurt, the mules are fine, and some travelers seem to be carrying an unusually heavy load. A familiar voice greets Master Rust, and he turns to see the night priest, Talia. He stares, utterly speechless at her unexpected appearance. Recovering from his shock, he expresses his surprise, stating he didn't expect her to be part of Kaylin's delegation. Xavier quickly explains that the night priest saved them from monster attacks many times on the way. Talia adds that she was already on her way to see Rust, and, upon learning the caravan was also heading to him, asked to accompany them. Rust listens, processing the information. Understanding the situation, he formally welcomes them to the borderland, heralding the start of a new tale. As Xavier marvels at Hipopo, Rust reflects on being reunited with familiar faces. Rust greets the night priest, Talia, thanking her for guarding the cargo he was carrying. She replies that she has been well since they last met, and thanks him in return. Seeing that she must be tired, Rust invites her to rest, and have some tea, an offer she readily accepts. She formally accepts his invitation. Sensing she has something to say that she doesn't want others to hear, he asks if she would prefer to speak in his tent. He then turns to Xavier, asking him to take the Kajiro square fruits to the center of the camp. Xavier readily agrees. Acknowledging the request is simple. Inside the tent, Talia is taken aback. She finds that all the furniture, the table and chairs, is intricately formed from living vines and roses. Rust reassures her that the plants are harmless and invites her to sit down for tea. She closes her eyes, explaining that excessive formality is unnecessary between them. Since he saved her life and she has converted to his god, she has already made an oath to lend him her sword. She insists he can simply call her Tala. He smiles, accepting her offer, and tells her that she can, in turn, call him Rust. As he encourages her to drink the tea while it's warm, she thanks him, a gentle warmth in her expression. She lifts the cup, appreciating the rich aroma of the rose tea. Rust notes that enjoying the tea together should help break the ice before he shifts the topic, asking her to tell him about the shaman, the one who had sent the familiar after him. She confirms his suspicion, stating that the shaman was indeed responsible for the destruction of her church. After Rust's departure, she followed the shaman's tracks to the capital. It was during this pursuit that she was cursed, a mark that allowed the shaman to constantly monitor her whereabouts. She continues, explaining that because Rust had lifted that very curse, she was finally able to track the shaman to his hideout undetected. Her expression turns to one of frustration as she admits that the shaman unfortunately escaped. However, she reveals that she found something in his hiding place, a small, dark, rectangular object. She adds that she found a large quantity of them. She presents the small, dark object to Rust, who eyes it with suspicion, noting it could be cursed. He asks to see it, taking the rectangular item from her gloved hand, a special pair of gloves enchanted with a purifying effect. As he examines the strange scribe, he asks if she has already shown it to the Alchemist Association in the capital. In response, she explains that she did not. Although she had gone to the Alchemist Association, she found the place in a terrible state. The walls were riddled with hastily covered holes, a pungent smell filled the air, and the employees looked like the walking dead. Listening to her account, Rust wonders if a slime or some other creature had run rampant inside. She continues, explaining that she suspected the board was dangerous news. She left the rest of the items with an acquaintance in the capital and came directly to him, someone she could trust. Holding the object, he commends her wise decision. A flicker of hope and fear crosses Talia's face as she asks if her suspicions about the object are correct. He confirms her fears, identifying it as a magic circuit board for military use, designed to convert magic elements into flames. Recalling her mention of magic guns at the hideout, he examines the board's transmutation signature and declares with near certainty that it was made by the Alchemist Association. The implication is stark. There's a strong chance of a connection between the association and the shaman. He elaborates on the board's function by explaining that magic guns are lethal to non-human life forms, which perish from absorbing too many magic elements, but are harmless to humans. However, converting magic elements into another form, such as flame, causes a conversion loss. He reasons that if the weapons were from monsters, there would be no point in this inefficient conversion. The grim truth of his explanation settles upon Talia. Her expression hardens as she voices the chilling conclusion. The weapon is designed to be used against humans. He affirms her deduction, but adds that there's a single, critical issue with the device. As he speaks, Rust's transmuted rose beast elegantly refills their teacups. He points out the flaw, explaining that the circuit board is defective. A visual representation of chaotic energy crackles around the board in his hand, illustrating his point that it would probably discharge accidentally upon use. His analysis continues as he notes the physical state of the board. He deduces that a scavenger slime has likely eaten part of it, causing the defect. An accidental discharge would cause immense damage to the user and their surroundings. The shoddy state of the equipment from his former workplace clearly disappoints him, and Talia agrees that the implications are terrible. Despite the grim news, Rust reassures Talia that she brought him very valuable information. He then states his intention to greet her superior, Lady Kalen, and asks Talia to take him to her, as he also wishes for them to meet. Talia agrees, and before they depart, compliments the tea, thanking his lovely transmuted beast for serving it. With several glowing transmutation wands held between his fingers, Rust stands ready outside a tent, a determined smile on his face. Let's get to work, he says to himself. He reflects on having to skip the welcome dinner for their guests, but his mind is on the task at hand. With Zal and the others departing the next day, he needs to transmute the Kajiro fruits into magic crystals. He can't shake the feeling that this is a significant business opportunity, one he should complete as quickly as possible. Before the night priest, Talia sits a grand platter of roasted meat, glistening and steaming. Her eyes are wide with a mixture of awe and hunger as she swallows in anticipation. From across the table, Rust observes the scene. He finds himself at a welcome dinner, seated opposite Lady Kalen, the lord of this land, who is flanked by her close aides. His gaze drifts to the truly delicious-looking food, then to Talia, who appears utterly captivated by the spread. He offers a warm greeting, welcoming them to the Admiral Dominion and acknowledging their difficult journey. He encourages them to eat their fill. Taking her first bite, Talia expresses immense gratitude, remarking how glad she is that her goddess Erasel's tenets do not include simplicity and frugality. As she chews, a jolt of pure shock courses through her. Her eyes narrow, her expression one of utter disbelief at the profound flavor. The taste of the meat, which she identifies as from a cow-type monster, fills her mouth. The seasonings and herbs are perfectly balanced against the rich juices, and a wave of herbal freshness from the sauce rushes through her, a sensation that permeates her entire body. She continues to analyze the experience, realizing the meat is saturated with high-quality magic elements. It must have come from a high-ranking monster. Noticing her reaction, Russ smiles. He compliments her, calling her quite the gourmet, and then asks if the meat is from a twin linehorn. Lady Kaelin confirms that it is indeed steak from an adult female twin linehorn, whose meat is known to be exceptionally rich in magic elements. She then reveals that the creatures were hunted by Master Rust himself. Kaelin gestures toward one of her aides, identifying her as Miss Ari, and remarks that Rust's skills as a hunter clearly match his skills as an alchemist. A server presents Talia with a wooden mug. She eyes the beverage, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, and wonders aloud if it is cold ale before taking a drink. The cold, richly fragrant ale washes down the lingering juices of the twin linehorn meat. A new wave of pleasure hits her as she savors the moderate bitterness of the fragrant hops, completely lost in the sensory experience. She found the ale wonderful, marveling that such a fine, cold drink could be found in such a remote region. It went down smoothly. In response to her praise, Kaelin explained that they use a magic item created by Master Rust. She added that he often makes such items to improve the camp for everyone's sake. Talia, who also possessed a top-of-the-line cooling magic item, conceded that she should have expected as much from the land Rust governs. The conversation then shifted. Talia turned her attention directly to Rust, asking what he had been doing in his tent earlier. Her expression grew serious, her previous delight gone. She didn't wait for an answer, instead revealing her true purpose. She declared that she is hunting the shaman to take revenge for her comrades. A clue related to alchemy had led her to the borderland, but she couldn't trust the alchemists in the capital, suspecting they might be connected to her enemy. She concluded by stating that Rust had already given her guidance, and that she knows no one else as talented as him. As she spoke, Kaelin observed her, thinking that for someone who lost everyone, Talia looked surprisingly radiant. Rust simply acknowledged his talent with a slight smile. Kaelin caught herself, realizing Talia's words sounded defensive, though she couldn't blame her. Her thoughts continued, focusing on Talia's concern for her comrade, a feeling Kaelin herself lost when the shaman attacked. A wave of jealousy washed over her as she remembered the many comrades she once had. Listening to this exchange, Rust's expression changed, his eyes widening as the weight of their shared history with the shaman settled upon him. Under the brightly shining moon, perhaps loosened by the alcohol, Talia found herself speaking of them, her comrades who were killed by the shaman. The words came out before she even realized it. 2 years ago, at the Erasla Church in the Turnagel Parish, the night priest Talia adjusts her gauntlets. Her name is called out with urgency, and she looks up from her task with a serious expression. The call came from a young girl named Chita, who looks up at Talia with an excited shout. The girl's face is bright with anticipation as she presents something she is holding. Chita proudly confirms that she sewed the object herself. Talia examines the handmade doll, remarking that it is nicely done, though she seems to recall that Chita was not skilled at sewing. Holding up the doll, Chita explains that she gave it to Talia, but her fingers got pricked while making a dress for it. Talia listens with a gentle expression, telling the girl how nice she is and that the doll must be happy. The conversation then shifts as Talia confirms she is heading into town for their regular shopping. The girl then makes a simple request, holding the doll forward. She wants a cute ribbon for her. Talia smiles softly at the innocent wish. She agrees to the request, but her moment of peace is shattered when a sharp voice calls her name from behind. Talia's expression instantly changes to one of wary surprise. A fellow night priest, Forte, approaches with a condescending smirk. She asks if Talia is going shopping and, with a whisper from her companion, Ale, mockingly requests that Talia fetch some old bear liver, calling it a delicacy. The memory continues, showing Talia and Forte walking together. The church's location in a forest necessitated regular supply runs, and on this day, it was Talia's turn. Forte informs her that she will be waiting with Ale. Before her departure, Talia stands before the parish chief, Sela Manning. The chief regards her with a faint, unreadable smile. Talia recalls her internal thoughts from that moment. She had a lot to get and wanted to leave early. The parish chief asks if she is just going to town and the usual forest. Talia confirms she is about to leave for shopping, explaining that they are out of medicinal herbs and it's a good time to gather them. Chief Sela simply asks if that is all. She listened as Lady Sela advised her to be moderate with her training, warning that it would be awful if she were injured while out alone. Talia swallowed nervously, reflecting internally that Lady Sela was like a mother to her, compassionate, admired by all, and seemingly able to see through anything. With the warning given, Lady Sela stood before a large, sunlit window and offered a final blessing. May the goddess Erasla watch over you, she intoned, her words echoing in the grand hall as Talia prepared to depart. The memory shifts to the present, where Talia explains the context of that day. She confirms her knowledge of the three faces of the goddess Erasla: love, wisdom, and vengeance. Because she was strong and held a special position studying both the creeds of love and vengeance, her training often took a long time. It was already night by the time she returned that day, and in the meantime, a shaman had attacked. Returning to the flashback, she walked back through the woods, the path dark under the night sky. She worried about how late it was, but hoped the cute ribbon and rare ingredients she'd bought would be enough for everyone to forgive her tardiness. She also fretted that Lady Sela would be mad at her. But as she crested a hill, a strange sight stopped her. An unnatural brightness glowed just beyond the next rise. Her heart seized with dread as she saw the source of the light. The church was engulfed in flames. Her shopping bag fell from her grasp as she stared in horror, wondering if everyone was still inside. The image of a young girl, Chita, flashed through her mind, lying motionless in a pool of dark liquid. Talia remembered how much she herself hated pain, and yet, the child had been tossed aside like an old rag. The memory of the little girl, happily wanting a ribbon, fueled Talia's desperate sprint toward the inferno. Reaching the burning building, she saw that the auditorium, the likely origin of the fire, was locked from the outside. Through the broken windows, she could see the burning silhouettes of people moving as if they were dancing in the flames. Her sword was useless. Despair washed over her. Someone was inside, but she was powerless against the roaring blaze. Overwhelmed, she could only watch. Back in the present, her story concludes with a quiet, defeated admission. I couldn't do anything to help. She continues her account, explaining that when the sun finally rose and the fire died out, the first person she could identify amidst the ruin was the parish chief, Lady Sela. Her body was terribly burned, but her face remained mostly untouched, still holding a kind smile even in death. As she embraced the fallen chief, a trap left by the shaman was triggered. Dark, ethereal tendrils erupted from the body, ensnaring Talia in a powerful curse. The shaman had known Lady Sela, was beloved, and had cruelly used her remains to curse whoever came near. She explains to Kaelin that she could not forgive the deaths, nor the way the shaman had toyed with Lady Sela's body. The bruises that later appeared on her own face from the curse felt like a symbol of the shame inflicted upon the chief. Overcome with sorrow, Talia confesses that she felt everyone else deserved to live far longer, and that she should have been the one to die. Hearing this, Kaelin gently places a hand on Talia's arm, apologizing for making her recall such painful memories. Talia looks toward her, stating that she owes a debt to Rust for having lifted the curse. Kaelin accepts this, addressing Talia warmly as Tala, and assuring her she is always welcome. With renewed determination, Kaelin declares her own intent to achieve her revenge, and only then will she present her sword to Rust. Touched by the gesture, Talia simply thanks her. She reflects that after Rust began doing so, she also started calling the knight simply Kaelin, marking a new, closer bond between them. Meanwhile, Rust has been diligently transmuting for hours, creating a large pile of processed materials. Feeling thirsty from the work, he is interrupted by Ari, who approaches carrying a tray. She notes the pressure he's under and suggests he take a break, offering him something to eat and drink. He gratefully accepts her offer, admitting he was just starting to feel thirsty. Ari informs him that their tent is nearby and offers to bring him a seat while he eats. Now seated outside the tent, Rust apologizes for the trouble, but Ari quickly reassures him that it is no big deal. He takes a long drink from a mug, sighing in satisfaction. The ale is incredibly refreshing after working for so many hours straight. He remarks that the ale is genuinely good, with a smell unlike anything he's experienced before, perhaps made from a plant-type monster. Ari explains that Litna, the food manager, made it for the welcome banquet and was very proud of it. Rust recalls that Litna also handles drinks and remembers his excitement when a barley monster wandered into camp, which he promptly went to hunt. The meal includes a thick twin Linehorn steak, a first for them. Rust muses that the cooks in the camp are excellent. Even when using the same ingredients, the meals are always prepared differently, making them something to look forward to. As they finish, Ari's demeanor shifts, and she states that there is something important she needs to discuss with him. Rust calmly invites her to speak. Ari gets straight to the point, asking if he's noticed that she and her sister have special powers. She reminds him of when they ambushed him outside the camp, and he confirms that he had figured it out. He elaborates, guessing her power is related to her ability to gauge a person's strength. Ari confirms he is mostly right, then explains her sister Roa's abilities. She can see things far away and even see through objects. As she speaks, Ari suddenly senses a strong presence nearby. She then reveals her own power, a limited ability to see the future. Rust is taken aback, remarking that their powers sound wonderful and that having magic eyes is the sort of thing usually confined to legends. Ari downplays her ability, explaining that her future sight is limited. It only activates in response to potential conflicts, letting her see a few seconds ahead. He insists that such an ability is great in itself. A thought strikes him, and he asks if her power means she knows his fighting style. He can imagine her smiling meaningfully beneath her mask. Flustered, he clears his throat and changes the subject, asking if she is certain about the strong presence she sensed. He leaned forward, his hands clasped, expressing his surprise that she would share such sensitive information about her magic eye, particularly the conditions that activate it. In response, Ari explained her reasoning. She stated that while her sister is her family, she also considers the people risking their lives alongside her to develop this new land as important. Her decision to trust him was based on his actions here. She elaborated, acknowledging that he has helped them a great deal. Because of this, and the trust he had earned, she had decided to ask for his help. Rust listened, his expression serious, and simply replied that he understood, urging her to continue. Her request pertained to a specific object. She raised a hand, pointing directly to the intricate, eye-like pattern on her mask, identifying it as the subject of their discussion. His gaze sharpened as he focused on the item. He analyzed it, sensing the magical elements radiating from the mask, and correctly surmised that it was a magical item designed to function as a seal. Ari seemed impressed by his perception. She presented both her mask and its twin, confirming they were special magic items and that only these two existed in the world. Rust admitted he was only half-guessing, but Ari cut to the heart of the matter, asking if he would be willing to repair them. She then explained the item's true purpose. These masks, she revealed, were created to prevent their powers from running rampant, but their effectiveness was gradually fading. The implication was not lost on Rust. He understood immediately that this meant her and her sister's powers were still growing. After a moment of thought, he offered a better solution. Instead of repairing the failing seals, he suggested creating two entirely new magic items, though he cautioned that it would likely take some time. Ari looked at him, a flicker of disbelief and hope in her visible eye. Overwhelmed by his offer, she reacted with profound gratitude. She bowed low, her voice thick with emotion as she thanked him profusely and swore that she would find a way to repay this kindness. He quickly urged her to stand, asking her to remember what she had just said, that they were all family, risking their lives together to build this community. With a warm smile, he affirmed that if she and Roa were his family too, then he would help them in any way he could. His words left her speechless. He watches as Ari thanks him for the meal, explaining that she needs to leave. He tells her he will examine her and Roa's cloth tomorrow, to which she quietly agrees before turning to depart. As she walks away through the encampment, he resolves to return to his work on the magic crystals. In the village square, now piled high with bags of transmuted crystals, Xavier stares in disbelief. He turns to Rust, who stands amidst his handiwork, and exclaims, questioning if he truly accomplished this monumental task in a single night. He then shouts for the villagers to begin loading the mules, acknowledging there's no time to be shocked. Turning back to Rust, Xavier admits that the alchemist is even more incredible than the village chief had described. With a final word, he announces he's going to get the big shot and departs, leaving Rust looking slightly flustered. Moments later, the official arrives. He introduces himself as Memmels, a civil official from the Dabbleton Dominion. He expresses his pleasure in meeting them and his utter surprise that the mountain of Kajiro fruits was transformed into magic crystals overnight. Beside him, Kalen quietly wonders if Memmels is the one in charge of the transaction. Following the introductions, Memmels gestures toward the nearby tent, suggesting they proceed to discuss the payment for the massive transaction. Inside, Memmels reviews the paperwork. He muses that the village chief must have recommended Rust to the feudal lord, anticipating the work would be done in one night and that payment should be ready. His attention is then drawn to the tools on the table. He identifies both the quill pen and the stamp as magic items, enchanted to prevent important documents from being forged or rewritten. To demonstrate, he picks up the ornate stamp, confirming it is a magic item. With purpose, he brings it down upon the payment document, causing a brilliant flash of light. As the stamp connects with the parchment, an intricate, glowing pattern of light spreads out from the point of impact, weaving itself into the paper to form an unbreakable magical seal. The finalized check is presented. Memmels remarks that the sum is more than double the annual budget for the basic research department. An aide hands the check to Knight Kalen, requesting she accept it and pay Master Rust's share as per their contract. Kalen calmly agrees. With the payment secured, Kalen rises and makes a stunning proclamation. She announces the creation of the Dominion's Alchemy Research Department, to be placed under her direct control. Then, looking directly at a bewildered Rust, she appoints him as its chief. He is still processing the shock when the aide from before kneels, remarking that he is used to Kalen's erratic behavior. The aide clarifies that this is an official proclamation from the Lord of the Dominion, Kalen Admiral, and that the new department's budget will be funded by the proceeds from the crystal sale, minus Rust's share. He considered the immense challenge ahead. Establishing a new department would not be easy. Nearby, an aide reviewed a clipboard, already anticipating the mountain of clerical work the task would entail, and could only offer a silent prayer for the new chief. As he contemplated this, the official, named Memmels, turned to him with a confident smile, assuring Knight Kalen that he would handle all the details without issue and was eager to put the strategic resources to good use. Rust confirmed that the transmuted crystals would be sent to their destinations, as previously agreed, including to Kaylin's own dominion. With the logistics settled, Talia Amaryllis observed from a distance, thinking to herself that Kaylin was at her best when scheming. Though surprised by the suddenness of it all, Rust wondered if Kaylin would now elaborate on the new department. Kaylin then addressed him directly, congratulating him on his new post and asking him to wait a moment longer. Before he could respond, Talia turned to leave, bidding him farewell for now. She wished him good health and success in his revenge, a sentiment he quietly accepted as she walked away. Once they were alone, Kaylin began to outline the duties of the alchemy department. Its core functions would be to conduct basic research, transmute magic crystals, and solve problems within the camp using alchemy. Rust listened, relieved to hear that he could continue his personal research as part of his official duties. She continued, instructing him to gradually increase personnel and develop the department into an independent organization. He was also to think of a name for it. Kaylin added that he would have considerable freedom with his budget, provided he reported his accounting, allowing him to do almost anything he wished within reason. He mulled over the task of naming the new organization, an entity under the country's direct control. He definitely didn't want a name too close to the Alchemist Association. Deciding there was no rush, he resolved to focus on what he could do now. Just then, the shadows of two figures fell across his doorway as a voice announced, "Master Rust, we are coming in." Rust greets Ari and Roa, apologizing for summoning them while they're busy. He explains that he wants to examine them regarding the information Ari shared with him previously. Ari graciously thanks him, and the two sisters stand ready. As he observes them, Rust recalls how Roa was constantly looking around the tent during her last visit. He realizes her magic. I must allow her to see through objects, a fascinating ability. He then commands his rose beast, which extends a vine to form two seats for them. Once they are seated, Rust clarifies his objective, to examine the flow of magic elements within their eyes and to understand the function of the magic cloths they wear to suppress their power. The sisters listen intently and agree in unison. He explains the first step of the procedure. They must wrap a sealing scroll around their eyes, which will block their abilities completely. In the meantime, he will conduct a simple examination of their magic cloths. Sensing their apprehension, he asks which of them will go first. Roa immediately volunteers. Russ agrees to start with Roa. He mentions that he's heard from Ari that Roa's magic puts a greater strain on her body and acknowledges the risk involved in removing an item they wear constantly. Roa calmly accepts, stating that it's fine and that they are in his care. He instructs her to wrap the scroll around her head, covering her eyes. She complies without hesitation. With the scroll in place, Rust announces that they can begin, and Roa affirms her readiness. As she holds the scroll, Rust places a hand near her head. A magical seal materializes with a sharp crackle, fixing the blindfold in place. He tells her she can let go now. With the seal complete, Rust asks Roa how she feels. From her perspective, there's only total darkness. She reports that she can't see anything. Ari calls out her sister's name in concern, just as Roa suddenly flinches and tenses up. Tears stream from beneath Roa's blindfold. She whispers that she doesn't have to see anything, realizing this is what it's like for everyone else. Overwhelmed, she calls out for Ari as Rust watches with a look of deep concern. Ari immediately rushes to her sister's side, kneeling to comfort the trembling Roa. As she holds her, Rust clutches the magic cloth he removed from Roa's face, realizing he must examine the item right away. He begins his analysis of the cloth, calling on Rose to bring him a magic element tester. This device, he notes, is used to replicate and check the flow of magic elements from a person's body. After a quick check, he confirms the magic stone within the cloth is functioning correctly and identifies that the item's magic supply is positioned directly over the wearer's brow. To continue his investigation, he employs pendulum dowsing to measure the flow of magic elements, the same method he used when investigating the disease. His examination of the cloth structure reveals it to be surprisingly simple: a buffer, a noise canceller, and an amplifier. He inwardly questions if such a basic design is rather pointless. He observes that while the build itself is thorough and the magic circuit inside was created with a good solution, there is significant room for functional improvement. His final assessment is that the alchemist responsible for the cloth was, at best, second-rate. He realizes he could easily combine some of his own magic circuits to create a functionally superior version immediately. This realization leads him to a new conclusion. Whoever made the item must be someone close to Ari and Roa. He glances over to see that Roa has calmed down under Ari's care, and he internally debates how much of his technical critique he should share. He decides to voice a different theory, suggesting to Ari that the sense of security the item gives Roa might be a more significant factor than its actual magical function. Ari considers this, and Rust agrees it's a strong possibility. He then asks Ari to put the cloth back on Roa's face so he can examine her. As Ari replaces the cloth, Rust, moved by Roa's earlier distress, acts on what he calls a whim. Taking Roa's hand, he initiates a protocol to transfer the authority of the sealing scroll directly to her. He explains to a questioning Ari that he has a few such scrolls, so she can have that one. Roa can now use it to rest whenever she feels the need. Ari looks down at the scroll, then at her sister, who is now calm beneath her familiar cloth. Turning away, Rust's expression darkens with concern. He mutters to himself, a flicker of regret crossing his face as he wonders if his impulsive act was a mistake. Meanwhile, Roa, now wearing the cloth over her eyes, clutches the sealing scroll to her chest and whispers a quiet, heartfelt thank you. While Roa was overcome with gratitude, her older sister, Ari, interjected with a single word, her masked face unreadable. She revealed that despite Rust's quiet tone, she had heard him very well. As she spoke, Ari gently held her younger sister, who sat crying with her face buried in her hands, overwhelmed by the gesture. Rust stood by, a silent observer to the sisters' intimate moment. Rust stands in his room, his expression thoughtful and distant. Below, a hexagonal patterned fabric, perhaps a blanket or a piece of alchemical equipment, lies still, sparkling faintly. He sits at his desk, having finished his examination of Ari and Roa's original magic items. He has crafted 2 new ones, but now finds himself uncertain, questioning whether he should actually hand them over. His hesitation stems from a strange sensation. From the original items, he can feel a powerful connection to their creator, someone who clearly held close ties to the sisters. He wonders if interfering is truly the right course of action. He acknowledges that the performance of his new items is far better. However, he considers the psychological element. The sisters are used to their old items, which possess rare and misunderstood special powers. For simply supplementing their ability to control their powers, he reasons that the items they've been using might actually be superior. This line of thought sparks a new idea. Instead of simple replacement, perhaps he should create a device to measure and compare their control with each set of items. He reflects that his research had previously hit a dead end due to his former workplace's tight budget and distractions. Now, with proper funding, he can pursue a different approach. A breakthrough occurs. Rather than trying to increase raw performance, he realizes he should create an item that can be turned on and off completely, allowing for total control. With newfound purpose, he begins furiously scribbling, reversing a formula and applying it to a new design. Having finished his creation, Russ steps out before a large tent, calling out to Ari and Roa. Thanking them for waiting, he announces that he has 2 new magic items for them. The masked sisters turn, one asking what they are. The new items are revealed. A pair of exquisitely crafted spectacles, their lenses gleaming. Ari holds the spectacles, puzzled. How do I use this? She asks. Rust calmly instructs her to unfold the thin metal arms and hang them over her ears. After she complies, he makes a request. Now, can you take off your veils? She does as asked. With her veil removed and the spectacles on, Ari's full face is seen for the first time. Her eyes widen and her mouth falls slightly open in an expression of pure astonishment. She looks at her reflection, a little flustered. Roa, also wearing a new pair of spectacles, comments that it feels fresh, while Ari thinks her own face looks cool. Rust, observing them, expresses his satisfaction, telling them the spectacles suit them very well. Ari admits to feeling a bit embarrassed, as she is not used to having her face uncovered. He then turns his attention to the practical application of his invention. Announcing that he will now explain how to use them, he decides to start with Roa's pair. The 2 sisters exchange a questioning glance, wondering what he has planned. Moments later, Roa puts the spectacles to the test. Now unmasked and standing in the shallows of a pond, she unleashes a focused burst of power from her hand, striking a large, armored fish with concussive force. She looks on with clear satisfaction. From the shore, Russ calls out, asking if they are working well. Very good, she confirms, adjusting the frames on her face with a confident glint in her eyes. He watches her, noting that since Apopo defeated the pond's dominant creature, armored salmon have been migrating upstream in great numbers. He realizes Roa is precisely striking the vulnerable gaps between the creature's rock-hard scales, a feat of accuracy he doubts even Kalen could manage, and wonders if the fish can be harvested for materials. He asks Roa for feedback, inquiring about any complaints regarding mode changes or stability in combat. No, she states plainly, adding that she can see perfectly and control her magic eyes just as she desires. From behind, Ari chides her for her bluntness. She elaborates, confirming that shifting between transparency and long-distance modes is seamless. However, she believes touch controls would be more reliable than voice activation in battle. Explaining that her right hand is occupied by her spear, she asks if all controls can be consolidated for her left hand. Rust immediately understands and holds out his hand, telling her he will make the adjustment right away. With focused intent, he rewrites the magic circuit within the spectacles, consolidating all functions onto the left side. He hands them back, declaring the modification complete. Roa puts them on and, with a joyful cry, begins to leap and twirl by the water, delighting in the new controls as Rust and a quietly laughing Ari look on. Ari's eyes are closed in a serene smile. Beside Rust, her sister Roa notes how happy Ari looks. Rust watches them, observing the quiet moment. As he watches, Ari suddenly extends her spear, its tip glowing as it points directly at a startled Rust. The spearhead shoots past him, not a weapon of attack, but a tool of precision. It plunges into the nearby water, impaling a large, armored salmon as it leaps from the surface, almost as if the fish had aimed for the spear itself. The realization dawns on Rust. She used her future sight magic eye to predict exactly where the salmon would jump. He looks over at the two sisters, who are now smiling happily together, and a thought crosses his mind about how they truly are siblings. He gulps, wondering if her magic eye works even outside of battle, and if she somehow just read his thoughts. Turning to him with a finger to her lips, Ari confirms his suspicion, telling him he's not entirely wrong. Meanwhile, at the association headquarters, Master Rahalzam fumes. He bellows that the idea of calling Russ back is utterly unthinkable. His outburst occurs in the president's office. She calmly directs his attention to a mountain of reports, explaining that every department is sending the same complaints. Either transmutations are failing due to low-quality materials, or delays in acquiring those materials are causing them to miss deadlines, forcing them to consider compensating angry buyers. She continues, her voice sharp, stating that other presidents are pestering her to honor their agreements. She then confronts Rahalzam directly, reminding him of his claim that Russ' departure wouldn't make a difference and demanding he justify the current chaos. She accuses him of not only failing to cover for Russ' absence, but actively damaging the association's reputation. Rahalzam attempts to argue, citing the physical damage to the building as a reason not to bring Russ back. The president cuts him off, shouting that she is aware. He then counters that their sales have hit a historical high even without Rust, but she is not listening. The president delivers her ultimatum. If Rahalzam cannot fix the situation, she will make him personally go and retrieve Rust. She officially puts him in charge of filling the void left by Rust's absence. Defeated, Rahalzam can only agree. Internally, however, he seethes, thinking that this is all Rust's fault. Still seething from his confrontation with the president, he storms through the halls of the arms alchemy department. His foul mood is a palpable force, causing the junior alchemists, including Kalen, to shrink away and pretend not to notice his passing. The tense quiet is shattered when an official bursts in, shouting for Master Rahalzam. He breathlessly announces that they have a problem, as another alchemist wonders about the source of the commotion. The official, looking panicked, points toward the source of the issue. He insists to Rahalzam that there must be some kind of mistake. His gesture directs Rahalzam's attention to a pile of returned goods, clearly marked as defective with evidence of melting caused by slime. Rahalzam's face contorts with rage. He grabs a junior alchemist, Sabesa, demanding to know the meaning of this and the status of the payment. Before Sabesa can answer, Rahalzam roars at him to check with the wholesalers immediately. Amid the chaos, another alchemist questions Kalen, who frantically denies knowing anything about the situation. They worry about what to do with the returned equipment, a source of their revenue. A senior department official overhears and instructs them to go check the nearest storeroom, as the items were supposed to have been delivered there. Following the order, a group of alchemists enters a cluttered storeroom. They note that managing storage falls under the arms alchemy department's jurisdiction and figure they can make space for the return goods if they tidy up a bit. While clearing a space, Kalen finds old wooden boxes and asks if they can be thrown out. Opening one, she discovers a dusty bottle of colorless liquid. She dismisses it as old equipment from the destitute basic research department, remarking that it can't be important if it's so dusty. Concluding the transparent liquid must be a defective potion, she suggests they throw it all away. The department head, unwilling to bother Rahalzam and risk his wrath, makes a swift decision. He orders a subordinate named Skeeny to dump all the old materials in the river. He then tells everyone else to stop wasting time and start bringing in the new-style magic crystals. As Kalen handles one of the crates, a faded label catches her eye, emitting a faint, dark aura. It reads, Concentrated Magic Element Solution. Handle with care. After a moment of hesitation, she closes the lid, dismissing the warning. This solution was a substance Rust used frequently during the early stages of his basic research. Unaware of this critical fact, Kalen decides she will borrow a transmuted beast to haul the crates to the river for disposal. On the other side of the city, the alchemical waste is poured unceremoniously from a drain pipe into the river. Fortunately, the magic elements within the solution are not directly harmful to humans. They would not cause injury, even if dumped directly into the water. However, this lack of any immediate, visible damage also meant that no one would notice the true consequences of the act until it was far too late. Beneath the surface, the river's wildlife begins to react violently, with fish twisting into monstrous, sharp-toothed new forms. Inside the bustling communications room of the Alchemist Association, the young alchemist Sabesa stares at a document in his hands, a look of concern on his face as his colleagues work around him. Suddenly, Gan appears, demanding to know what is going on. He calls out to Sabesa before snatching the paper from his grasp, his face a mask of grim intensity. He quickly learns the cause of the alarm. A large quantity of old-style magic crystals are apparently circulating. The news enrages Gan, who slams his fist down, shouting that it shouldn't be possible. Gan reasons that since imports are completely blocked, it can't be smuggling. He also dismisses the idea of a traitor within the association, as they would be thrown out on the spot, and he believes no unlicensed alchemist will be skilled enough for such a feat. Utterly frustrated, he mutters that he is quitting. The situation worsens as he receives another report. Clients are returning the association's new-style magic crystals left and right, leading to a massive surplus of dead stock. A department head asks about the sales figures, only to be told that they've managed to recover very little. The financial reality crashes down on Gan. They are deep in the red. Sabesa looks on in shock. Gan, sweating and trembling with rage, refuses to believe this catastrophic turn of events. He clenches his fist, vowing not to let this happen. The humiliating thought crosses his mind that he might have to beg Rust to come back. Elsewhere, an aide calls out to Master Rahalzam, as another observer notes that the chief is summoning him and looks furious. His anger boiling over, Gan yells at the helpless Sabesa to do something, but the younger alchemist can only reply that nothing can be done. Gan storms off, cursing Rust's name over and over as he leaves the association headquarters. Far away, someone lets out a sudden sneeze. Meanwhile, in a distant, sunlit field, Rust travels peacefully with his companions, completely unaware of the chaos he has caused or that his name is being cursed. The summons has been answered. Master Rahalzam stands flanked by Gan and Skeeny, his face contorted in fury. He is being given a direct order, and, as he grits his teeth, he can only curse the situation he's been forced into. Gan confronts Rahalzam, his voice tight with anger, declaring that he is taking personal responsibility for bringing Rust back. Elsewhere, in a forest clearing, Rahalzam briefs two hired men. He expresses his doubts, calling them mere delinquents who can't fight well, but concedes it's better than nothing. He looks uncertain, questioning if this is truly the right course of action. One of the hired men bristles at the instruction, telling Rahalzam not to order him around. In response, Rahalzam presents a specialized gun, explaining that it was made by him and contains magic circuits capable of changing its elemental output. The scene shifts to Gan, who grins with malevolent glee as he gives Rahalzam his true orders, to blast Rust from behind and burn him to a crisp. He elaborates on his cruel scheme. The hired men are to lure Rust out in a way that attracts monsters, letting the beasts do the dirty work. He promises to split whatever money they find on Rust's body evenly. The two thugs eagerly agree, assuring him they can handle a week shut-in and telling him to leave it to them. Rahalzam sweats, his mind racing. He internally blames Rust for coming to this remote, monster-infested region. Meanwhile, Gan fumes, thinking about the president and his own need to save face. He dismisses the idea of using a communications device, as it would leave a record of his orders. A realization then dawns on Rahalzam. The diverse creatures of this area are highly sensitive to sound, a fact he could exploit. As if on cue, a small, dark creature with writhing tentacles appears nearby. Rahalzam calls out to his men. They glance over, unimpressed, and dismiss the creature as no problem. Rahalzam curtly orders them to get it. Following the command, one of the thugs raises the magic gun and fires a brilliant blast of energy. The small creature is instantly vaporized. The two men exchange a look of smug satisfaction, laughing about how easy it was and boasting that the weapons make them invincible. Their confidence is short-lived. The loud gunshot echoes through the remote region, attracting unwanted attention. From the undergrowth, new monsters emerge, an aggressive, fish-like creature, followed by more. The tentacle creatures also begin to swarm. One of the thugs stares in disbelief, realizing they've become the targets, and questioning the sheer number of monsters now converging on their position. The trickle of monsters becomes a flood. Rahalzam bellows for his men to shoot them. One of the thugs struggles, noting that changing the gun's element is rapidly depleting their magic supply. Despite their efforts, the creatures, a writhing tide of black tentacles, just keep coming. The ambush descends into pure chaos. One thug cries out in frustration as his weapon misfires. The creatures are on them, with one grabbing his hair. He screams for his partner to shoot, but the other man is frozen in panic, stammering that his own weapon is out of magic elements. The first thug turns to Rahalzam in desperation, shouting that his magic crystal is spent and the gun is useless. He begs for spares. Rahalzam's face contorts in rage as he bellows back. I don't have any spares. From a safe distance, Gan observes the pandemonium with a cold, triumphant smirk. He watched in fury as his hired men turned and fled, abandoning him to the swarm. Where are you going? He roared, his voice filled with disbelief and rage as they disappeared into the chaos. As the creatures swarmed closer, he let out a frustrated grunt. He couldn't believe he was being forced to fight these weak-looking things. With a grimace of determination, he decided to end this quickly, initiating an activation. The activation established an interdimensional connection, summoning a complex array of sigils before him. He placed his hand forward, commanding the entity to lodge in his flesh. The incantation called forth a parasitic transmuted beast number 1, known as Crash. A wave of pain shot through him as the creature began to gruesomely merge with his arm. The transformation completed, leaving his arm encased in a monstrous, organic weapon. Surrounded by the horde of small monsters, he glared down at them with contempt, his voice a low growl. You little bugs. For some reason, Master Rahalzam's transmuted beasts were all parasitic hyphae that lodged within his own body. This was his only method of attack, and because of this, he despised having to participate in battle. With a grunt of effort, he unleashes his power. From the ground, the hyphae begin to sprout. Small, pale, Mushroom-like creatures emerge from a creeping root system, growing rapidly and covering the forest floor. In moments, he is standing in a vast field of his own creations, a sea of twitching, fungal beings. Suddenly, the creatures turn on him. He lets out a pained scream as the swarm attacks its own master. One after another, the small monsters latch on. He curses them as bugs. One sinks its teeth into his thigh with a sickening crunch, and he bellows in agony and disbelief. He stumbles back, clutching the wound. Damn it, he roars, shocked that his own creation bit him. His expression hardens with annoyance. He thinks to himself that a simple potion should fix the injury, but his brow furrows as he wonders what in the world is going on. He remains trapped, a lone figure amidst the writhing field of his now hostile, transmuted beasts. His face twists with fury. With a sharp motion, he brandishes a rectangular transmutation card, his patience clearly at its end. Turning his back to the chaos, he directs his rage elsewhere, bellowing into the forest. It's all that guy's fault. He sat alone, overlooking the tranquil landscape, a dark chuckle escaping his lips. His thoughts were consumed by a single name, a promise of retribution whispered to the wind. Just you wait, Rust. Meanwhile, Rust was undertaking an essential alchemist task. He explained that one of the main jobs for alchemists in developing regions is to cultivate land. In areas with a high concentration of magic elements, crops won't grow and can even mutate into monsters. Therefore, they must extract these elements and expel them into the atmosphere. To begin the process, he needed to dig holes in the roughly plowed land, large enough to fit his hand. Finding the ground a bit tough, he was about to struggle when Hippopo offered to take over. With powerful stomps, the beast created the necessary holes with ease. Rust praised his companion, confirming the preparations were complete. He then took out several transmuted bulbs designed specifically for extracting magic elements. As he buried them, he thanked Hippopo again, acknowledging the task was difficult. With the bulbs in place, he checked for any leaks before initiating the activation sequence, beginning the magic element diversion. The ground lit up as the bulbs activated. Sheets of magical energy were pulled from the soil, breaking apart and dissipating harmlessly into the sky. Rust watched the successful extraction with satisfaction. A voice expressed approval, noting that the process was good, but caution was needed to avoid overextraction. At the same time, a small, knitted object was presented. He paused, looking down at the object now in his hand with a puzzled expression, wondering what it was. The speaker, a young woman with glasses, explained that it was a token of her gratitude for the magic item he had given her. She added that it was a traditional charm from her hometown. Holding the small charm, Rust looked at her and asked if she had knitted it. Flustered, she began to stammer a response. Instead of speaking, she simply gave a small nod, looking down with a faint blush. She explains that the charm can be cut when necessary. Rust smiles, remarking how happy he is that the gift is from Roa, then wonders aloud how its ability to be cut makes it a charm. As the soil cleansing will take some time, Rust decides to read a precursor's paper to pass the moments. Relaxing atop Hippopo, he unrolls a scroll titled A Comparative Study about the Concentration of Magic Elements in Soil and Wheat Planted on it. He reflects that he transcribed every paper from the basic research department into this scroll before he left, certain that Rahalzam and the others would have simply thrown them away. He continues reading the study, which theorizes that residual magic elements make food taste better to humans because the brain misinterprets the ingestion as enhanced flavor. He notes, this is an interesting paper related to his own research on the effects of magic on the human body. Just then, the bulbs in the field signal completion. Hippopo lets out a cry, and Rust thanks his companion for the alert. At that moment, Ari appears, spear in hand. She calls out to Master Rust, confirming the soil's elemental concentration is just right and praising Hippopo's timing. Surprised, Rust says her name. Ari's tone becomes serious as she warns him that someone is there to see him, and it might not be someone friendly. She asks the shy alchemist if this person gave a name. With a troubled expression, the young woman confirms they did, her voice low as she reveals the visitor's identity, Rahalzam. The name hangs in the air, punctuated by the image of Rahalzam's grim, menacing face. Rahalzam watches in silence as Rust, his expression troubled, turns to the young alchemist. He admits to having a bad feeling and asks her to explain more on their way back. Before she can respond, he gently takes her hand, excusing himself. Now mounted together on a popo, Rust urges her to hold on, announcing his intention to speed up. With determined expressions, they prepare to race across the landscape. As they gallop across the wasteland, the alchemist marvels at the speed and comfort of the ride, wondering aloud if a popo is adjusting its pace to keep them steady. Rust explains that Rahalzam, a former colleague from the Alchemist Association, is likely here for the magic crystals. He adds that he anticipated this confrontation, as Rahalzam always seemed to have a problem with him and was constantly starting trouble. He then asks if something is on her mind. The alchemist confirms that while she cannot see the future clearly, she can feel a battle approaching, one far more significant than a simple fight. Her vision is suddenly consumed by a brilliant white light. Through her mind's eye, she sees a vision of a desolate, war-torn landscape. She perceives a great conflict on the horizon, something that could be called a war, where forces appear and disappear in flashes. Returning to the present, Rust observes that Ari answered his unspoken question, confirming the magic item she uses is working correctly. The alchemist, adjusting a monocle, agrees that the item is perfect and is likely the reason she can foresee the coming battle. He accepts her vision as almost certainly true and asks if it means he and Rahalzam are destined to fight. Visibly distressed, she apologizes, admitting she doesn't know for sure, as she has never felt a premonition this strong. Rust gently tells her not to apologize, thanking her for the warning. His kindness startles her, triggering another, more intense vision. She sees a swirling orb of light held in a hand and understands with sudden clarity. A turning point of fate is imminent, and it revolves around Master Rust's choice. The vision sharpens, presenting two distinct paths branching from a single point. One is labeled the best choice, the other the worst choice. She realizes both hold equal significance as a turning point in fate. Her sight then fragments, showing a shaman's hand. Two men standing in a desolate land swept by wind, and the chilling realization that fate itself is breaking apart and running its course. He realizes the magic monocle is responding directly to the inherent magic within the alchemist's eye, creating a synergy that grants a future sight far beyond his expectations. The processing speed is at its limit, but the connection holds. He can only wonder just how far into the future she is able to see. The strain suddenly proves too much, and the alchemist lurches forward. He quickly grabs her to keep her from falling off a popo, calling out her name, Ari. She quickly recovers, thanking him and assuring him that she is all right now. He observes that her future sight has stopped, but realizes that using her magic places a much bigger burden on her than he had previously thought. His expression hardens with resolve. No matter what fate brings, he internally vows to protect everyone. He considers them his family, after all. From behind him, the alchemist quietly affirms his sentiment with a simple yes. He clears his throat, slightly embarrassed by his own declaration. As a large encampment appears on the horizon, he tells her to hang on, as they must get there quickly and will be moving at full speed again. As they arrive at the encampment, Lady Kaelin calls out to Master Rust, directing him forward. He expresses concern for the alchemist's well-being, but she insists that she will see this through. She warns him to be careful, explaining that she senses an evil presence in the man he is about to meet. Rust wonders if she perceived this with her power of transparency. Kaelin, known as a heavy warrior, wore specialized meteoric iron armor that is not for defense, but rather to make her heavier and increase her attack power. He turns his attention to Rahalzam, who stands waiting in a barren field. Rust apologizes for the delay, and Rahalzam simply acknowledges that he is here. Master Rahalzam lets out a low, confident chuckle. He observes Kaelin taking a combat stance, noting to himself that a master-rank alchemist like him, who specializes in physical combat, might be too much for her to handle. Before the confrontation can begin, Rust steps forward, placing himself between his companions and Rahalzam. He tells everyone to get back, declaring that he will handle this. From a distance, Rahalzam finally addresses him, asking what his business is here. Rust, pinching his nose, retorts that something stinks. Rahalzam's face splits into a wide, eager grin. He announces that the Alchemist Association is officially reinstating the basic research department. He tells Rust to rejoice, explaining that the president has offered him a chance to work for the prestigious association once more. He urges Rust to come back, framing the offer as a great honor. A bright, unambiguous smile spreads across Rust's face. He gives his simple, definitive answer, no way. His cheerful refusal leaves Rahalzam utterly dumbfounded, his eyes wide with disbelief. Rust turns his back on the stunned man, explaining his reasoning. He clarifies that while the disbandment of the basic research department was the catalyst, he quit simply because he wanted to. He feels he can truly advance his research right where he is. His explanation causes Rahalzam to seethe in silent fury, his face contorted with frustration. Nearby, Kaelin and Ari watch the tense standoff. The frustration on Rahalzam's face suddenly erupts into wild, manic laughter. He throws his head back and howls, his unsettling joy echoing as the others watch in alarm. In response to this bizarre turn, Rust's expression hardens. Declaring his intent to crush the man, he begins to activate his own power. Rahalzam, however, looks on with a pleased grin, as if this was his goal all along. As Rahalzam begins to transform amidst a whirlwind of energy, Ari shouts a desperate warning to Rust. She reminds him that it is forbidden for Master Alchemists to fight to the death, and that in the best-case scenario, he would merely lose his qualifications. Rust watches the chaotic scene, sensing that something serious is unfolding. He recoils as the transformed Rahalzam lets out a guttural roar. The hulking alchemist, his form now monstrous and shadowy, bellows that he will not be leaving any witnesses. As Rahalzam's threat hangs in the air, Rust notices something else. Spores are filling the space around them. He quickly covers his mouth, realizing he must get some distance and avoid inhaling them. All around, small mushrooms begin to sprout from the ground, twitching as they form. The newly sprouted mushrooms begin to move, having grown limbs. Ari observes them with alarm. Rust identifies them as slime mold-type, transmuted beasts. He deduces that Rahalzam must have attached a poisonous element to them. While they don't look strong individually, their sheer numbers pose a significant threat, and he concludes that he must take them all out at once. To counter the swarm, he pulls out a small, sealed scroll. With a look of grim resolve, he offers a silent apology to his opponent, knowing he has no choice but to dispose of him. His hands begin to glow as he initiates a transmutation, forming a spinning disk of energy. He identifies his target, the Polish scroll. A flicker of recognition crosses his face. It's the same type he used in the production of magic crystals. Realizing its potential, he decides to unleash its full power. With a final push, he releases the scroll's limit. A massive, swirling vortex of polishing energy erupts from his hands, tearing through the air towards the horde of mushroom beasts. With a determined cry, Rust unleashes his power, shouting to release his limits. A powerful vortex of wind erupts from his position, swirling with immense force. He channels the vortex into a massive tornado that tears across the battlefield, sweeping up the horde of mushroom-like transmuted beasts. While unsure of their nature, he resolves to shred them completely. From a safe distance, Ari, Roa, and Rahalzam can only watch the display of power. The tornado gathers strength, pulling in every last creature. Rust's primary thought is to get the threat as far from the camp as possible. Rahalzam, witnessing the overwhelming force, begins to sweat, unnerved. Rahalzam observes the chaos within the funnel cloud, remarking to himself that the suction power is pulverizing the creatures and throwing them about like a grotesque mushroom smoothie. His observation is cut short as a stray piece of debris flies out from the tornado and strikes him squarely in the face. As the winds die down, Rust lowers his hands, breathing heavily. He scans the now barren landscape, wondering if he managed to destroy them all. However, where the horde once stood, a single, massive, amorphous blob of flesh has now formed from their remains. Ari and Roa comment on his incredible and merciless strength, noting how quickly he acted. Despite their praise, Rust feels a deep unease, a sudden urge to simply run away. His instincts prove correct as the blob begins to twitch and rise. The creature fully forms, letting out a psychic scream of pure rage. It mourns its destroyed mushrooms, roaring, "How dare you!" The mental assault causes Rust to flinch in pain, his companions looking on in shock. As the creature's form continues to shift, dark energy and strange symbols flare around it. Holding a small rod, Rust recognizes the phenomenon with alarm, identifying it as a manifest scroll. The manifest scroll's power culminates in a terrifying transformation. The amorphous beast sits cross-legged as a gigantic, dark mushroom cap erupts from its head, spewing spores and raw power. Rust can only watch as his opponent evolves into a far greater threat. He watches as the transformed creature releases a strange gas. Realizing it's heavier than air and will quickly spread across the ground, he wonders about its nature. The beast then turns and flees into the distance. Beside him, Ari urges them to give chase. As he voices his concern that the gas could be poison, Rahalzam steps forward. Despite the creature's erratic behavior, the master-ranked alchemist declares his intent to act, activating an ability by releasing a limit and disengaging a seal. He then begins his work, invoking a powerful purification spell. A vast, intricate hexagonal structure materializes, enveloping the area contaminated by the mysterious gas. The structure solidifies, its crystalline walls distorting the space within. Rahalzam explains to the sisters that its purpose is to separate the different gases in the air, warning them to keep their distance. From afar, Rust observes, understanding that such a complex technique must require a great deal of focus. Meanwhile, the fleeing beast reveals its own plan. It explains that it is also separating gases, shaping them into distinct air bubbles, one of which is composed of pure oxygen. It continues its process, using a lens-like effect to focus sunlight onto the oxygen bubble, preparing to project it as a weapon. The focused energy is launched, striking its unseen target. The highly concentrated oxygen ignites, creating a massive thermal explosion. Back at the purification site, Rahalzam successfully contains the poisonous purple smoke within a jar imbued with a purifying effect. Roa, having inhaled some of the now harmless vapor, remarks on its pleasant smell, much to her sister's indifference. With the threat neutralized, he seals the jar, his task complete. Further on, Rust's determined pursuit is interrupted by Kalen's voice. She alerts him that the rest of their party is behind them. From that group, Ari uses Roa's long-distance sight to confirm they are straight ahead. Acknowledging the update, Rust reaffirms his intent to pursue the creature. As the group pressed onward, their pursuit was abruptly halted when Roa cried out a warning, her mast perceiving an imminent threat. "Something is coming," she shouted. Her urgent cry immediately put Rust and Kalen on high alert, their heads snapping up towards the source of the disturbance in the sky. The sky was suddenly filled with a terrifying swarm of creatures, armored salmon that had somehow evolved wings. They stampeded through the air in a chaotic frenzy, a development that made Rust wonder at the sheer misfortune of the timing. He found himself paralyzed by indecision, torn between two critical choices. Should he continue his pursuit of Rahalzam, or remain behind to defend the camp alongside his comrades? Stepping up to take command, Kalen began issuing orders with authority. she decided to temporarily name the new threats Winged Armored Sky Salmon. She directed Ari and Roa to engage them first to test their fighting power, while she herself would assume command of the battle and organize the evacuation of all non-combat personnel. Her voice rang with conviction as she delivered her most crucial command: prioritize survival above all else. Having established a plan, she turned to the still-conflicted Rust. "Master Rust," she called out, asking if he was going after Rahalsam. She quickly added that, no matter his choice, she would respect his decision. A sudden, sharp instinct whispers to Rust. His mind becomes clear on one point. He must go after Rahalsam. He immediately questions this impulse, wondering if this is the turning point of fate Ari had foreseen. He is torn between two choices: chase the fleeing Rahalsam or stay and defend the camp. He knows that Kalen and the others are not equipped to handle the swarms of flying enemies currently descending upon them. Rust analyzes the situation further. A purely defensive battle against the hard-scaled aerial threats would lead to significant casualties without sufficient alchemical support, and he cannot reach them from the ground. Yet, letting Rahalsam escape feels like a grave error. He recalls the unspoken rule: master-ranked alchemists are forbidden from fighting one another. He knows the reason for this rule is not for the alchemist's own safety, but for the people around them. A battle between masters has a high chance of devastating the surrounding environment. The threat could escalate, and if Rahalsam were to unleash his full power, the consequences would be catastrophic. With a new clarity, Rust makes his choice. "I'm staying here to defend," he declares. Looking at Kalen, he realizes something crucial. If he were to leave and people died, she, as the one in charge, would have to bear that sadness and regret alone, never letting anyone see her pain. His decision made, he informs the sisters that Rahalsam can be dealt with later. He is returning to the defense. Ari and Roa quietly accept his command. As the swarm of sky salmon darkens the horizon, a new order comes. "Master Rust, please get ready to exterminate the sky salmon." He understands. Ari protests, shouting for him to stop, insisting that he must chase Rahalsam. She feels he is asking too much of himself. Rust firmly cuts her off. Ari quiet. He states his intent to follow his orders, though he internally questions the command to exterminate. He reflects on his choice. It's not that he disbelieves Ari's vision of the future, but he remembers his past self, who had become completely passive. He recalls Rahalsam's words, an apology for the sudden contact, but also an offering of a choice. Rahalsam had told him to rely on his comrades and offered his own help, a decision made based on the trust Rust had built. He was given a choice for his future. His resolve hardens, his expression set with determination. Facing the oncoming swarm, Rust stands ready. He now fights to protect all the irreplaceable things: Kalen, the others, and every single person in the camp who gave him a place to belong. He watches as the swarm of armored sky salmon unexpectedly splits into two groups. One continues its descent towards the camp, while the other veers off, heading towards the distant capital. He wonders aloud if this could be considered good news, his gaze shifting down to where Ari and Roa are already engaging the attacking creatures. The sisters call up to him, confirming they are fine and that all personnel with military knowledge are with them. Ari explains they are leading the non-combatants to the underground food storeroom for safety, understanding their logic, that an underground shelter is the best defense against an aerial attack. Rust affirms his trust in them. With no time to waste, he plants his foot firmly, ready to act. He bursts into a supply tent, his hands immediately beginning the intricate process of a rapid transmutation. Vials and materials are gathered with practiced speed as he initiates the complex alchemical procedure. The air fills with light and swirling alchemical circles as he works on a massive scale. He manipulates a concentrated magic element solution, releasing the constraints of gravity to form multiple complex items simultaneously. His transmutation yields 9 glowing spheres. He recognizes them as being crafted from the highest quality materials and realizes with grim determination that this is no time to be stingy. He pushes aside his usual tendency to conserve resources. While he would normally try to be as frugal as possible, he reasons that he can always make more items later. Saving the people of the camp, he concludes, is a small price to pay for using such precious materials. Despite his resolve, the strain of the process becomes immense. He reflects that rapid transmutations require focus akin to threading a needle, and he is attempting several at once. Gritting his teeth, he pushes himself further, knowing that if he loses focus now, it will all be for nothing, as he has no materials for a second attempt. The immense effort pushes him to his physical limit. A bead of sweat rolls down his face as his vision begins to blur. He feels his consciousness starting to slip away. Just as he is about to lose his grip, a sharp, resonant ping echoes through the tent. His eyes snap wide open in shock, his fading focus instantly replaced by alarm. An unseen force erupts from his work. He cries out as he is thrown violently backward, his body contorted by the blast from his own failed transmutation. He steadied himself, realizing how close he had come to losing consciousness. The strain was immense. He was preparing 9 combat scrolls simultaneously to fight the enemies in the sky. He knew that transmuting even a single scroll normally required a great deal of time and materials, a core, monster skin, a magic circuit, and a magic stone. To attempt 9 at once was a monumental risk. His immense effort paid off. Before him, 9 completed scrolls materialized from the swirling energy. As they floated down, he recalled a brief conversation with a fellow alchemist. She had provided him with a key component, a string connecting 2 small stones, and instructed that the string could be cut if necessary. Roa then approached, handing him the 2 stones. He accepted them with a quiet word of thanks, but his relief was fleeting. His gaze shifted upward, his expression hardening with worry as he clutched the device. He could only hope that everyone else was still all right. In the camp square, Russ looks up as a massive swarm of winged, armored fish descends. In the distance, the dark silhouette of Kalen is already airborne, engaging the threat head-on. Kalen's blade flashes through the sky, cleanly bisecting one of the creatures with a powerful, precise strike. From his position on the ground, Rust watches in admiration, recognizing Kalen's jet-black, full-plate armor. He identifies her as the war hero, a small but formidable figure darting through the swarm. He muses that she's charging in like a jet-black raging bull, which must be the origin of her nickname. He understands that while she possesses strength many times that of a regular person, she lacks physical mass, a deficiency her heavy armor and huge sword are designed to compensate for. Kalen lands with a crash nearby, startling Rust as she asks if he is fully ready. From a distance, Ari remarks on Kalen's incredible speed, but Roa seems unconvinced that she can handle the entire swarm alone. Rust's focus shifts to the creatures, realizing they're carrying eggs. He understands that simply smashing them would spread the eggs around the camp, causing even more trouble later on. With a new strategy in mind, he decides to eliminate them all in one control maneuver. With a confident smile, he confirms, "Got it." He then begins his work. Spreading his arms wide, Rust declares, "Let's begin," as he activates multiple alchemical scrolls at once, their sigils flaring with power. Watching from the sidelines, Ari recognizes Master Rust's alchemy and tells Roa to take a break. Rust considers his options. He could use polished scrolls to shred the creatures, but that would cause significant damage within the camp. Instead, he manifests a different set of scrolls. He calls out a single name, Rose. In response, a colossal volley of thorny vines erupts into the sky, forming a dense barrage of projectiles aimed directly at the swarming sky salmon. He unleashed the attack. A storm of vine-like projectiles surged into the sky, a massive, singular construct aimed at the heart of the swarm. The projectiles converged mid-air, not piercing the creatures, but ensnaring them, wrapping the entire swarm in a colossal, thorny net. And then, in a flash of displaced air, the entire tangled mass vanished. The sky above the camp was suddenly, unervingly clear, with only faint motes of energy dissipating where the threat had been moments before. Ari and Roa looked on, bewildered. "That's incredible," Ari murmured. Rust lowered his arm, explaining that this was a practical application of manifest scrolls. He had used return scrolls on only parts of his rose construct, which then transported the ensnared creatures to another space entirely. He gave a quiet thanks to his rose for its part in the maneuver. While observing a fallen armored sky salmon, Rust notes its unique adaptations, developed fins for flight stability and hard scales that house magic elements. He deduces they are larger than previous specimens and use atmospheric magic for lift. Turning his attention to a massive web of vines containing a swarm of the creatures, he speaks to his rose beast, apologizing for the strain and promising to prune it carefully after the battle is won. His analysis complete, he looks up at the sky, filled with the swarming creatures. With a determined expression, he decides it is time to exterminate them. He raises a hand, invoking a powerful ability. Calling upon his scrolls, he commands them to disperse, unleashing a wave of energy that blasts through the swarm and scatters the sky salmon across the horizon. Meanwhile, in another part of the camp, the food manager, Litna, swings a massive cleaver with a powerful cry. His role in the camp is varied. Sometimes he is a cook, and at other times, he is responsible for the food storeroom. He fights against the seemingly endless tide of monsters swarming the camp's food storeroom, where the attack began shortly after its establishment. The butcher, fighting alongside him, calls out, complaining about how tough the creatures are. Litna grimly agrees, acknowledging that at their current rate, they will simply be pushed back and wondering what their commander expects them to do. He recalls Lady Kalen's message, which only instructed them to bear with the situation. Though he questions how long they can last, he decides they must trust her, as her guidance has not failed them yet. Turning to the other defenders, he rallies them, shouting for everyone to keep fighting. He confides in the butcher that they should be looking for an opportunity to retreat, but he is putting his faith in Lady Kalen. His thought is cut short when the butcher spots something new approaching from the sky, asking what it is. Litna starts to remind him that he isn't the commander. A tangled mass of thorny vines suddenly erupts among the sky salmon, ensnaring and consuming them. Litna and the butcher stare in shock, questioning if it's a new type of monster. As the creature devours the salmon, a villager cries out in panic that their defensive formation has been broken. Cursing, Litna sees the line falter. He bellows at the defenders not to give up as the salmon press forward. The men are in disarray, overwhelmed by the chaos and the sudden appearance of the strange new creature. He stares in disbelief as a whirlwind of thorny vines, seemingly erupting from scroll, shreds the swarm of sky salmon. A nearby villager voices the question on everyone's mind. Is this the power of Master Rust's alchemy? The sheer destructive force leaves him momentarily speechless. He reflects on how all those sky salmon were annihilated in an instant, a feat their own commander's axe couldn't accomplish. He concludes that master-rank alchemists are truly monstrous, noting with a wry salute that the carefree-looking Rust certainly employs gruesome methods. Shifting his focus back to his duties, he asks Xavier for a damage report. The man confirms 12 minor injuries, mostly scratches and blows, but 0 casualties. A smile of relief spreads across Litna's face. It was a near-perfect defense. His relief is cut short by the dejected muttering of the butcher, who feels their efforts were ultimately unnecessary. Litna turns on him, his expression hardening as he calls the man an idiot. The butcher's mind spirals, consumed by hypotheticals. He considers the catastrophic damage that would have occurred if the enemy had broken through their lines immediately, or if they hadn't evacuated the non-combatants in time. Litna interrupts his subordinate's brooding, telling him not to wallow in feelings of weakness just because he has witnessed a greater power. He claps the butcher firmly on the back, offering encouragement. He explains that it's not about being weak, but about proper role sharing, relying on the right people in the right places, and letting those with overwhelming power take the lead when necessary. Putting his philosophy into practice, Litna rallies his men, calling for a small group to follow him and mop up the remaining stragglers. As the butcher watches with newfound respect, realizing Litna's true quality as a commander, a panicked shout rings out. Some of the mules are under attack. In the depths of a forest, a body collapses. It is Rehalzam, groaning in agony as he lies sprawled on the ground. His face is a mask of pain and confusion as he questions why this is happening to him. He struggles, panting for breath, and a bitter realization dawns on him. He identifies the root cause of his misfortune, Rust. His mind flashes back to the day the young alchemist arrived at the association, believing that was the moment everything started to go wrong. His memory drifts further, recalling a younger Rust expressing a simple interest in alchemy. Rehalzam scoffs at the thought, remembering his own childhood disdain for the art. He recalls his mother finding mushrooms in the garden, ordering him to get rid of the gross things before they spread, comparing such primitive life to alchemy itself. The flashback continues. His mother asks if he studied alchemy, but he dismisses the notion. He reflects that both his parents were brilliant alchemists with high hopes for him. He did eventually follow their path, becoming the head of the arms alchemy department, only to witness Rust being celebrated as the youngest master-rank genius ever, an achievement Rehalzam considers nonsense. Snapping back to the present, Rehalzam's face twists in pure fury. He sees that Rust will pay for this. He vows revenge, not just on Rust, but on everyone, promising to humiliate the talented young man and make him taste despair. As his rage consumes him, his eyes fall upon a strange, cracked pod on the forest floor. He reaches for a potion from his belt, but as he grasps it, the vial crumbles into dust. He stares, bewildered, questioning why it happened. Panic begins to set in. He frantically checks his other potions, only to find them useless. Roaring in frustration, he realizes he needs a better solution. He decides he must make it back to the association, where he knows high-quality potions are stored. Resorting to a desperate measure, he decides to use an item he'd hoped to avoid. He activates it, initiating an interdimensional connection to summon a creature, the parasitic transmuted beast in Degree 4, the Myxomycete King. He commands the entity to creep onto his flesh. The beast manifests as a violent, swirling vortex of matter and energy. It surges towards Rehalzam, enveloping him completely as his body contorts within the chaotic mass, beginning a painful transformation. The process completes, leaving a large, dark sphere hovering in the air, a single glowing eye at its center. From within this new, monstrous form, Rehalzam's will issues a command to be taken to the capital. The sphere begins to move. In the capital, Master Rehalzam is forcibly returned, encased in a bubble of water. He struggles against the current, trying to halt his momentum as he is propelled toward the city. He collapses past the city gates, clutching his wounded side. He knows he must hurry to find a potion. He realizes that under normal circumstances, his disheveled state would attract the attention of guards, but the streets are eerily quiet. The reason for the silence is a street devoid of its usual bustle. The capital's thoroughfare is nearly empty, a stark image of the recent chaos. Elsewhere, a man stares in disbelief at a pile of rubble. He wonders if he took a wrong turn, as the Alchemist Association's building should be standing right where the destruction is. The man falls to his knees in despair, realizing the rubble is all that remains of the association. He laments having given his life to his job. A voice from behind addresses him, but as he turns, he sees not Master Rehalzam, but a mysterious hooded figure. The figure observes the scene, noting that a barrier must have cleared the people away. They muse on the spectacle of the armored salmon attack, finding it curious that the creatures seemed to head straight for the Alchemist Association, as if drawn to something inside. Their attention returns to the man on the ground. The figure calls the situation a shame, remarking that the attack was a wonderful coincidence. They mentioned that an annoying swordswoman had limited the destruction, so most buildings were only moderately damaged. The terrified man can only stammer, asking who they are. The hooded figure dismisses him as a trivial, unimportant man. With a chilling smile, they reveal their purpose. They came to thank Master Rahalzam for shipping defective magic circuits. The man begins to sweat profusely, realizing his secret plan has been ruined by Rahalzam's actions. In a swift, brutal motion, the figure thrusts their hand into the man's face. He cries out in agony as the strange power makes contact, his body convulsing from the sudden, invasive attack. Retracting their hand, the hooded figure examines their work with a pleased smile. A grotesque, branching pattern has erupted across the man's skin. "Oh, look at this," they say with fascination. "I may have found something marvelous." They continued to hold the man's face, observing that the demon inside him was growing very well. The hooded figure noted his outstanding magic affinity with fungi and that he was filled to the brim with negative emotions, musing that this could be very good indeed. The man, Master Rahalzam, weakly stated there was no need for thanks. Unperturbed, the hooded figure announced that as a token of their gratitude, they were going to give him a great present. As they finished speaking, a dark, corrupting energy erupted from Rahalzam's body. He convulsed violently as the strange power twisted his form, his body contorting in agony. The hooded figure watched the horrific spectacle with delight, remarking how wonderful it was. They were glad to have stayed, and, before departing, wished him a happy demon life, mentioning that that woman might come soon. Elsewhere, the pain in Rahalzam's right leg suddenly vanished. A group of villagers turned toward a sudden flash of light as one of them called out, asking if everyone was all right. Their concern turned to shocked cries as mushrooms began sprouting from the ground around them. Rahalzam screamed as his body continued to warp and melt, reshaping into something monstrous. The transformation completed, leaving a hulking, demonic version of Rahalzam kneeling amidst the destruction. A furious bystander pointed, identifying the creature as a demon in human form and blaming it for the recent attack by the armored salmon. The man's accusation ignited terror in the streets. Cries of demon filled the air as citizens began to flee, shouting for everyone to run for their lives. From a balcony above, the chaos was clear. The crowd screamed for the demon to be killed quickly, debating whether to call the army or the knights. Hope for the alchemists was dismissed, as only wounded apprentices remained. Amidst the pandemonium, the transformed Rahalzam looked at his own hand in confusion as parts of it seemed to pop like bubbles. He wondered why everyone stared at him with fear. As the crowd screamed about poison and pushed to escape, he reached out a misshapen hand, weakly asking them to wait. He remained on his knees, his body cloaked in the tattered, dark substance of his transformation. Looking up, his eyes, now marked with dark lines, held only bewilderment. As he tried to process his situation, a weapon was raised, its barrel aimed directly at him. The weapon belonged to one of a line of armed guards blocking the street. At their forefront stood Rust, his face set with grim resolve. Raising his hand, he issued a chilling command. Everyone was to ready their weapons and fire at once.